Hello, hello. Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to Shopify's Investor Day at Shopify Unite 2019. Whether you're listening over the webcast or whether you're here in the room with us today, my name is Katie Keita. I head Investor Relations here at Shopify, and I am so pleased that the Unite team was able to make room for us here at this conference. This conference just gets better and better every year, and just a really big shout out and thank you to the Unite team who did a lot of the heavy lifting for us. If you did not get a chance to see the demo area downstairs, I would encourage you to after our talk track. And I hope you all took really good notes during the keynotes because there was a long list of product announcements. And hopefully you got to chat with our gracious partners who made time for this lunch here and some of the Shopify product leads and got to chat with them as well. Now we're going to round out the day now with the next few hours. They're devoted to a fantastic lineup of speakers, starting with our CFO, Amy Shapiro. Amy's going to be followed by Harley Finkelstein, our COO, and then Lauren Paddleford from Shopify Plus. After that, we'll take a 10-minute break and then come quickly back into the room. And we'll hear from two more speakers, Jeff Weiser, our Chief Marketing Officer, and Toby Lutke, our co-founder and CEO, will close the day for us. Now, because we have people listening over the webcast, I'd ask you to wait until a microphone comes to you to ask your questions, because after any prepared remarks from the speakers, and of course we're going to turn it over to you for your questions. And finally, if you've been following Shopify for a while, you know that we only give business updates 4 times a year, and that's when we report our quarterly earnings. So any questions that have anything to do with updates on the business for April or May, please just hold them until we report earnings at the end of July or early August. So there is still so much going on at Shopify that there is a ton to talk about today. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to welcome our CFO, Amy Shapiro, up to the stage.
Things in a different light, things that were wrong go right. You and me making chemical equations, deadly combinations.
Hey, good afternoon. And welcome to the investor track of Unite. For those of you who are here in Toronto with us, thank you so much for being here and participating in this exciting day for us. You heard from leaders across Shopify this morning all the ways that we're making commerce better for everyone. The success of our merchants drives everything that we do, and that in turn drives our success and then generates value for investors. I'm going to build on what you heard this morning, leaving you with 2 core takeaways. First, a clear understanding of our merchant-centric business model, which is built to be able to scale. You heard a lot of that this morning of how we're scaling, and there's a whole lot more potential there. And second, how that puts us in a great position to pursue new opportunities for our merchants, specifically highlighting Shopify Fulfillment Network that was just announced this morning. Before we start, please take note of our disclosure on forward-looking statements and non-GAAP financial measures. Okay, so let's start with the first takeaway, a clear understanding of our merchant-centric business model, which is essentially the Shopify flywheel with 3 strategic objectives, which you see on the slide. It is absolutely central to how we achieve our mission to make commerce better for everyone. So let's talk about how the flywheel works. The flywheel starts with keeping a wide funnel. Seeing commerce through as broad a lens as possible ensures multiple voices contribute to the future of commerce. And it informs our product roadmap on how we can make our platform more powerful for all merchants. Next, leveraging that information and keeping merchants' operations simple, we attract more merchants by providing them with the tools to easily manage their business. More channels, more partners, more capabilities. Lastly, all of that results in keeping merchants' sales growing. By simplifying their operations and giving them great tools, we help them to be more efficient. By being more efficient, they're able to devote more resources to growing their business. Every dollar that we spend as a company is to achieve these 3 strategic objectives and to energize the flywheel. The flywheel has also been helped by strong secular tailwinds, the rise of self-employment aided by technology, a growing desire to shop online rather than in a mall, and large enterprises wanting to be more entrepreneurial as well and have a direct relationship with their consumers. And we continue to add energy to the flywheel by pursuing new opportunities, continuing to grow our platform in international countries, delivering more of what merchants are already spending money on via our own platform, but doing it better for them, and leveraging the wealth of our data to benefit our merchants. So how do we know the flywheel is actually delivering? Just look at the strong annual revenue cohorts. Each cohort has grown and remains strong, deepening their relationship with us. And cohorts have been increasing in size, attracting more merchants who want to take advantage of the broad array of solutions that we now offer. We attribute this to the strength and scalability of the flywheel. With a solid base of growing merchants, we increase our subscription revenue. And with more tools, we help our merchants grow their GMV. As merchants and GMV grow, we have a greater opportunity to expand merchant solutions, and the flywheel keeps turning. Merchants who are successful on the platform outweigh those who are not. With successful merchants, we retain their subscription revenue, and we also gain revenue associated with their GMV growth. And GMV growth has been strong. Retention of GMV on the platform is high, as shown by our annual GMV cohorts since 2014. This is because when GMV is generated, merchants have little incentive to leave the platform. And those merchants who are less successful, if they leave, they often take little or no GMV. At Shopify, GMV growth has been driven by both small and large merchants. GMV from our core SMB merchants in green has expanded significantly. We've added more merchants, but those merchants have also grown their businesses on our platform. For merchants on the platform for greater than 12 months, the average monthly year-over-year growth was 24% last year. As our merchants become more successful, they also upgrade to higher level plans. The GMV coming from merchants who have upgraded to Shopify Plus is highlighted in orange, and that's continued to grow. And the GMV from new merchants migrating directly onto Shopify Plus, shown in pink, has grown in the mix. Larger businesses not born on Shopify are increasingly attracted by our strong value proposition. Our speed, agility, mobile, out-of-the-box solutions, and increasingly rich functionality, as you heard from the main stage today. It appeals to a broad range of larger merchants, from individual brands to large CPGs building brand-specific stores. As we've expanded what's available via our platform, we've clearly benefited revenue-wise, as you can see from the chart, which depicts our various revenue streams over time. They've all grown. But more importantly, merchants are getting greater value from our platform. That's what this chart says. We are making more features and functionality available to merchants via the central system in which they operate their business every single day. And we can deliver what they're already spending money on more effectively and less expensively. We started with payments, and we introduced other financial services like capital, fraud protect, and multi-currency. And we added shipping labels where adoption has grown every quarter since launch. So we're often asked, what's next? And you heard it from the main stage this morning, Shopify Fulfillment Network. So why Shopify Fulfillment Network and why now? Merchants' need for fast, reliable, affordable fulfillment is clear and growing. You heard several merchant stories from Craig this morning. This is a real issue for merchants. Long wait times for delivery to buyers, high shipping costs for buyers, leading to cart abandonment, lost sales, and low customer satisfaction. This is a big opportunity for Shopify to step in and fill this gap and provide more value for merchants, for buyers, and Shopify. Shopify merchants achieved $41 billion in GMV last year, more than half of which was from the US. Our addressable market for fulfillment includes the majority of our US GMV. It's expected to reach hundreds of millions of fulfillments annually over the next 5 years. So why Shopify? Merchants trust us. We have a track record with them. And our central role in a merchant's operations uniquely positions us to streamline this part of the sales process that is so critical to their success. We can see where an order comes from and where an item ships from and to. This gives us a deep understanding of the physical footprint of logistics. We can leverage our massive data set to build out a fulfillment brain to service our merchants, unlike their other partners can do for them today. So we'll offer merchants a streamlined fulfillment experience with deep machine learning tools, including demand forecasting, smart inventory allocation across warehouses, and intelligent order routing. In so doing, we think we can improve supply chain economics and delivery for merchants, making delivery faster and cheaper than it is today. With the fulfillment offering, as we've done in the past, we'll deliver value to our merchants first. Through competitive rates, we'll pass along our aggregated savings to our merchants like we've always done. And through higher cart conversion, we expect competitive rates will translate immediately into higher cart conversion for merchants with their buyers. And ultimately, that's what this is all about. Think of this as more energy into the flywheel. By doing that, we expect value to accrue to Shopify over time and at scale. So how are we going to do this? We're going to roll out Shopify Fulfillment Network in phases. First, we're currently working hard to achieve product market fit. Our goal in this phase is to offer merchants a network that addresses their needs as effectively and as quickly as possible. This first phase is asset light for Shopify, building our nationwide network using fully vetted and monitored third-party warehouse and logistics partners. This will allow us to build the software brain of the network, connecting the network, predictive algorithms, pricing and billing, and the user experience in the merchant admin. We expect work on this phase to extend through the end of 2020 and possibly into 2021, at which time we expect to achieve product market fit, which is fast, affordable, and near perfect order rates. Once we've achieved this, we'll then enter the scale phase. As demand grows to 10 times this and beyond, we plan to continue using rented capacity with our partners and augment it with our own according to demand and unit economics. So let's talk about the costs. The cash costs in the product market fit phase are lower given more limited volume, the fulfillment volume shown in green. The cost to build are mostly the fixed costs in yellow and include OpEx, the R&D team to build the software, and some small CapEx, approximately $20 million or less, if we decide to build a few small test warehouses in this phase. The costs to operate are mostly the variable costs based on volume in pink and include cost of goods sold, third-party provider cost per fulfillment for warehouse services, and OpEx, product marketing and sales costs. These costs include hiring the expertise and third-party partners as we begin operations to build enough infrastructure to test and learn in a controlled way. This is consistent with how Shopify has invested in every major area. Plus, payments, international, balancing discipline and cost effectiveness with what meets merchants' needs to build value for them and for us. And all of the costs for 2019 are already included in the forecast that we've given you for this year. Of course, the point of all of this is to offer merchants faster and cheaper fulfillment. If we offer a greater value proposition to them, we expect they will leverage it, triggering greater investments to support fulfillment at scale. As volume in green grows, so will the cash costs to support the growth. The cost to build continue to be mostly the fixed costs in yellow, include OpEx, the continued R&D investment around software, but that should decrease as a percentage of the overall cost. And CapEx could increase in this phase as we may build own capacity if partner quality or efficiency is not meeting demand. The costs to operate are mostly the variable costs based on volume in pink and include cost of goods sold, which would continue to reflect warehouse service costs, but could start to shift in this phase to some owned operations. And OpEx, continued marketing and sales costs mostly. As we scale, we believe that we will increase fulfillment margins given more volume over fixed costs and greater partner volume discounts. But again, the point of this is that we believe that we'll also see increased conversion with buyers, our merchants will, with faster and cheaper shipping. So let's wrap this up. While we don't expect fulfillment to be easy, we're committed to solving this for our merchants. By being highly intentional, we're optimistic about our long-term opportunity here, meaning we'll work with partners to innovate like we always have, and we'll apply what we've learned before we move forward. The $1 billion of spend that you heard from the main stage this morning includes all of the cash costs forecast over the next 5 years, and includes both the fixed cost to build and the variable cost to operate based on volume, the cost to move the goods, as I just described on the previous 2 slides. And the bulk of the spend only comes when we reach the scale phase. We expect that we will scale this in a way that is cash neutral through 2023, with the revenue largely offsetting the costs, and the net return is expected beyond 2023. We believe this could unlock great value for our merchants, for our partners, for buyers, and for Shopify. So I want to thank you. And before taking your questions, I'd like to introduce Thomas Epting, the person leading Shopify Fulfillment Network for us. Thomas joined. Thomas, where are you? Thomas joined Shopify over a year ago from Uncommon Goods, where he was co-founder, and he helped to build the teams that fulfill thousands of unique shipments every day throughout North America. And so I've invited Thomas up to join me to answer your questions about this new and exciting part of our business. So thanks, and we'll have a seat. And I think the microphones are making their way around.
Hi there. I have 2 questions. The first one is about the cost to the merchants. I was wondering if you could give us maybe a range of how you see this charge to merchants and how competitive it is with alternatives on the market. And then the second question I have is, as you expand to the fulfillment market, Is there any chance that you would be interested in potentially having a Shopify store that offers all these products that your merchants have just in a one-stop shop, similar to obviously Amazon?
You want to take the first one?
I'll take the pricing question. So when we talk to our merchants, they dislike the complex, the convoluted pricing of outsourced fulfillment today. So what we've done is we've simplified that in a couple of specific ways. It's very simple storage pricing that you can calculate and decreases as your inventory burns down. We also have a simple single charge for fulfillment and transportation, pick, pack, and packaging. It's market competitive, and it's better than any single Shopify merchant will be able to get on their own, because obviously we can aggregate the volume of lots of Shopify merchants and bring that to bear.
Right, and on the, I think it was mostly kind of like a marketplace question. Clearly, as I alluded to on the flywheel, as our scale gets larger and larger, there's more that then becomes possible for us to do for our merchants. So while we're not announcing anything, it's something that we certainly could contemplate in the future.
So how should we think about things like last mile delivery and drones and things of that nature?
There you go.
Oh, you're the logistics expert.
So think about it a couple of ways. Right now, Shopify merchants are at a particular disadvantage in their checkout conversion because the time in transit that's being offered for that last mile is measured in days and sometimes in weeks. We're not at the same race to same hour fulfillment that marketplaces are after. We're thinking about this as bringing it to parity where the buyer expectation is. Right now, the buyer expectation is they want they want a low-cost delivery, and they want it in a couple of days. And so that's what we'll build out. Shopify, as you know, is very interested in technology. We believe the trend lines here are very clear, and we'll work with partners to build out the right tech solutions, the right automation, to simplify or to reduce the unit economics while always keeping this simple for Shopify's merchants.
So specifically with Amazon, obviously they've spent a long time building out this expertise, invest billions of dollars into it, have a pretty big head start, particularly on the robotics side. And while we don't know for certain, it seems it's pretty clear that it's a loss leader for them in certain ways. So how do you expect to compete with that, and be able to scale that up in just a few years while they're continuing to pour investments in theirs at the same time?
I think they are solving an analogous problem, but not the same problem. So if you think about Amazon and the couple of decades that they've spent on this, they're running a very large supply chain. Large supply chains have been optimized for a long time. SMB supply chains are analogous, but they're different, right? And nobody has spent the effort to put in that same kind of volume aggregation. Nobody has the amount of data that Shopify has. When you think about, depending on how you measure it, 5 to 10% of e-com in North America is running through Shopify. So we have this massive data set to build out the similar kinds of machine learning that will drive those efficiencies, that will help us deliver top-line forecasting that is more accurate, allocate inventory effectively, and then route those orders to the closest delivery center. There's another way that it's different than what Amazon is doing. Think about who Shopify is. We're merchant obsessed. So everything that we're building about this is directed at merchant first. We want to help them keep their customer. We want to put their branding and packaging front and center. And we want to help them. We won't compete with them. We want to help them thrive long term. And so that's another way where it's a very different problem we're trying to solve here.
Yeah, and I'd just also add, we're leveraging partners for a lot of this. We likely always will. So that should lower some of the costs for us as well, relative to the billions that Amazon might have spent on this. We think we can do this using partners effectively.
Yes, thank you. Could you maybe share a little bit of information in terms of the economics with the partners that you're trying to bring on here?
So when you think about you're an outsourced fulfillment provider, top of funnel is pretty challenging for you. So are the tech integrations. You've either got to spin up your own dev team and do one-off integrations, or you have to build an integration to Shopify or others. So we're taking away a bunch of the cost, talking to fulfillment providers, and we're talking to everybody you would expect, large, global supply chain companies, as well as the disruptors in this space. They're happy to make money on their own unit economics, what they do well, which is pick, pack, ship. They know how to move goods through networks. They know how to get that stuff done efficiently. We're taking away cost centers for them, and we're providing them this data layer on top that will allow them to be more efficient at what they do. Therefore, the unit economics for those partners will continue to get better over time. But it's also a network where we're creating competition, right? So we expect that as particular partners show better quality or better unit economics, more volume will flow to them. And so this should become more efficient over time as well.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Amy, a follow-up on the economics. How should we think about this as the average take rate per dollar of GMV? Or has the company thought about what type of impact that would have on the take rate? And then maybe similar to that, I know you're not giving updated financial guidance, but are the expected investments for 2019, were they already embedded into the guidance the company gave last quarter?
Yeah, I addressed that one in the presentation. I'll reiterate it, that all of the costs, P&L and CapEx-wise, are included in the guidance that we've already provided you for 2019. And then on the take rate, it's too early to say. We're just coming out of beta right now on this with a handful of merchants. We're moving to an early access program on this where we'll invite more merchants in, and as we're learning, like we always do, we'll provide updates on our quarterly calls to help you understand how we're progressing.
Hi, thanks for taking the question. Would this be more of a standalone offering, or would you make it only available to people who sign up for payments also?
Yeah, I mean, right now, yeah, we would view it as kind of a standalone offering. You don't have to be on payments to take it.
So in terms of the target merchant for this, I mean, with Plus, I mean, obviously, very large established merchants, presumably they have maybe their own fulfillment, right? And I guess it's mainly U.S. focused. So when we think about all the customers on Shopify's platform today, how would you sort of define the initial opportunity in terms of customer set as you think about rolling it out?
Yeah. As Craig said from the main stage today, it's mostly going to appeal right out of the gate to merchants who have anywhere from sort of 10 to 10,000 orders per day. So while that's probably a smaller percentage than what would take shipping labels from us, it's a larger percentage of our GMV and fulfillments that's addressable.
Hi, would the average merchant have to increase their investment in working capital by virtue of the fact they'll be in multiple warehouses rather than one central one? Or would your machine learning algorithms hopefully prevent that from being the case?
It's a super smart question. It's actually one of the most powerful things about the Shopify Fulfillment Network. With the accuracy that we've already achieved with that top-line demand forecasting, merchants should be able to more efficiently allocate capital. We'll be able to show them which of their SKUs in the Pareto turn fast enough that it's worth putting in multiple fulfillment centers, and which SKUs should just be in 2, and which SKUs should be close to their mode customer.
Could you just give us a sense of, in the fulfillment industry, how much, for a typical order you should expect to, the merchant should expect to pay, and how much profit a fulfillment provider might be expected to earn?
So the unit economics for the fulfillment providers are similar to what they're seeing today if they were to aggregate lots and lots of volume together. In terms of the pricing, it's actually customized. So when you think about, there are things that you care about in 3PL land. How fast are SKUs turning? How large are they? What's the total dimensional footprint that we have to store? What do lines per orders look like? Do I have to make 4 picks on an average order, or is these single, easy to do? How much complexity? Like in the example on main stage, are we talking about fragile things like a record? Or are we talking about simple things like a t-shirt? And so we shouldn't tell you what the average price looks like, because that's part of what's valuable here for Shopify, is we're able to look through all of the data and then come back with something that the partner can make money on and that will be great for Shopify's merchants as well.
Thanks. Do you have a sense of how much of cart abandonment is driven by this kind of suboptimal maybe shipping options? And I mean, if this is really successful years out, could it change the channel mix of some of your smaller merchants and how they distribute when you think about where that could go?
There's industry data about this. We're still working on our own case studies and validating this ourselves. You hear anything from low double-digit checkout conversion lift all the way up to Amazon saying it's magic, right? And so the truth is going to be somewhere in between there.
I would like to understand a bit more detail of how much of the global shipping supply chain you're getting involved in. For example, to get something from Shenzhen to Long Beach to the ultimate customer, it's very complex, long, fragmented sort of process. So how much of this will you take on, and who are your partners going to be?
We're thinking about this very specifically as a merchant problem with fulfillment today. But Shopify has a long history of skating to where the puck's going to be, and so it's the right question to ask over time.
So are you only concentrated in the U.S. right now?
One step at a time.
So it's really only the U.S. right now?
Correct.
Hi. Of the 7 fulfillment centers you announced, are they all assumed to be partner provided, and the incremental would be potentially built by Shopify?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Hi. Sorry, guys. Of your merchants, how many are shipping 10,000 items per day right now? How many are shipping 30? And has that been a pain point for larger merchants that may have wanted to come onto the platform, that logistics wasn't part of the operation and was a roadblock?
Again, as I said, it's the majority of our U.S. GMV. And yes, it's been a pain point, which is why we're doing this. It's pricing, but it's also the complexity of the pricing. It's all the things Craig talked about on the main stage. You know, having multiple systems trying to keep track of your inventory. It's just simplifying it, which is what we do beautifully for our merchants. And you know, we've talked to enough merchants to know they want this, and they want us to solve it for them.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. How much of the software has already been developed, and what's the time required, I guess, staffing required to get it to commercial availability for the U.S. market? Thanks.
Because we are passionate about quality, we were really careful on that. We dog-fooded with the Shopify hardware store. We've built an app that connects natively into Shopify. We built that Shopify fulfillment brain. That brain makes recommendations on the quantity of each product per location. The app allows you to create inbound transfers, schedule the transportation, all of that kind of work. It handles all of your outbound shipping needs for direct-to-consumer, your retail replenishment. So if you're a Shopify merchant running your own store, it does some wholesale functionality today. There are complex EDI future states. So you're a Shopify merchant selling into a big box retailer, and they have very specific routing requirements. That's future roadmap being built out. We can support most of wholesale, but not all of it. And a number of other things like that. So kitting, special projects, kind of value-added services that you sometimes ask your 3PL to do for you. All of that is built and available today and has been hardened and tested. So that's one of the things we're most proud of about this, is that we said the network needs to be able to be a partner. You need to be able to ship same day at 99.5, and 99.5 of those orders need to be what the industry calls a perfect order, right quantity of right SKUs to right address, right customer. In our last measuring period, or year to date, perfect order is at 99.9, and we've gotten our same day shipping percentage to 99.8.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Big hand for you guys answering questions. All right, next up, a person who really needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway because he's probably the only person at Shopify who just might DJ his very own Shopify bar mitzvah. Our COO, Harley Finkelstein.
Thanks, Katie. Good afternoon, everyone. I know many of you, and I've met with many of you in the past, so I want to sort of jump into Q&A as fast as I can. Before I do that, a couple things I want to just talk a bit about. Some of the things I did mention on the stage, but obviously we're sitting here at Unite. We have 1,800 people here from 50 countries. The theme of my keynote today was really about the opportunity ahead. One of the things that I think, at least I wanted to get out today to these partners, was that these new things that we talked about, whether it's physical retail and a further in-depth focus on physical retail, or it's the Shopify Fulfillment Network, or it's what we're doing with Shopify Plus, or it's our international expansion, each one of these on their own is a massive opportunity. And as I said on stage, none of them existed even a year ago. And so hopefully that's what, from my objective, that's what the partners leave with, is they sort of go back home wherever they live and they decide to increase their investment from a talent perspective, but also from a financial perspective in the Shopify platform. That is getting easier. This is our fourth Unite. This is the fourth time I've done this keynote. The first keynote that I did was in San Francisco back in 2016 at Unite #1. It was a little more difficult then because they had more options. At the time, companies like BigCommerce and Volusion were still around. You had some of the CMSs that were beginning to flirt with e-commerce widgets. And so it wasn't just showing them opportunity, it was also convincing them that Shopify was the right horse to back. And I feel a little bit different this year that they sort of realize if they want to build great applications, great themes, and great products, the biggest, the total addressable market for those products live on Shopify. And so I hope that's what they got out of it. The second thing that I'll cover is just a question that I know I'll get anyway, so I might as well preempt it, which is where am I spending most of my time right now beyond DJing my own bar mitzvah, which is sort of threefold. Shopify Plus is a place that I'm spending a lot of time. I think Lauren Paddleford is in the room somewhere, or he was. He'll be back. Oh, there he is. Lauren Paddleford, who I sort of refer to as the founder of Shopify Plus inside of our company. He will tell you that the first 5 years of Plus, we had a really, really strong, very sophisticated sales organization, very good marketing. And we had a really good product. Did we have the best product for very large merchants? I'm not sure. I think some of them gave us a bit of a leap of faith. I think that's over now. I don't think they have to sort of take a leap of faith anymore on it with our Plus product. It's the reason why we're not only seeing brands start with us and go really big and never have to leave in the case of the Bombas, Allbirds category. It's also the reason why we're seeing way more CPGs and way more migrations from much more typical enterprise platforms come to Plus. With the release of the new Plus product now, I think their ability to run multiple stores across a number of geographies in a very simplified way where they can see the entirety of their business will make them feel like this is really a retail operating system for them in the same way that it does feel like that for the SMBs. The second area is international. We brought on Aaron Brown, who I think was in the room. I'm not sure if Aaron's still in the room now, but we brought Aaron Brown over from Amazon about almost 2 years ago to the day to help us find true product market fit internationally. I said this earlier on stage, but we've had merchants in 150 countries for a long time, but they were effectively, in some cases, painstakingly hacking together Shopify to make it work. When we brought Aaron over, we told him that we want merchants anywhere in the world to feel like Shopify is built for them. And the three sort of tenets of that, at least there are three pillars of that to begin, was having local payment methods, was having local partners, and then third of all was making sure that Shopify's admin was translated to their language. You heard earlier today that we're going beyond just our 7 initial languages, but our priority countries remain the same. We think those are the right priority countries. But by laying the groundwork for new languages, it means that when we decide there are new priority countries in the future, it's a lot easier to embark on that path. And then finally, merchant solutions. I still think this is one of the neatest opportunities for our company. I think the fact that merchants, both big and small, the relationship that we have with them is different than most software vendors. They don't view us in the same way they may view their whoever they use for accounting or whoever they use for email marketing. In many cases, when they say they're going to work in the morning, what they mean is they're going to their office or they're going to a cafe or they're going wherever they are and they're opening up the Shopify admin. That relationship provides us with an opportunity that we've began to take advantage of. It means that if we say, hey, we know you're using shipping, we can do a better job where you pay less money, the product experience is better, and we actually make more money, they're going to go for that. We did the same thing beyond shipping. We did the payments with capital. We've now given out about $500 million worth of capital to merchants that may not otherwise have done it on their own. We have great business there. And then most recently with fraud protection services. There are new I know some of you could ask, what is the next merchant solution? We're not ready to talk about that yet, but there are other areas where we feel strongly that we can actually add a ton more value for merchants, where, again, they pay less money, product is better, but also it further increases the barrier of exit off the platform. If Shopify is their inventory management system and we're their e-commerce provider and we're helping them with physical retail and we're their payment gateway, we're their capital provider, we're their shipping provider, at a certain point, Shopify is their business. And I think we can get there. I think we're already getting there. I think there's a lot more we can do to further increase that barrier to exit or that moat that we have. Some of those things we will look for signals from things like our app store. In the case of shipping, we've been consulting with our third-party shipping app providers for a number of months now, letting them know what to expect here so they wouldn't be surprised that this was coming, and making sure there still is room on the table for them to make money. We've done that over the course of the last decade or so in a way that I think maintains trust with that ecosystem, but still allows us to expand our product offering. So those are sort of 3 of the areas that I'm spending a lot of time on. Probably the last thing I will say is you heard something on stage today that you probably haven't heard me say before, which is if you aggregate all of our US merchant sales, you realize that we're the 3rd largest online retailer in the United States. The reason I haven't said that before is because we didn't really think that was something that people cared to understand, but the reason that's an important statistic is because it shows you the economies of scale we have now. We are bigger than Walmart.com. We are bigger than Apple's online retail. When you look at it in that way, what you begin to realize is that when merchants come to us, they don't just get great software, they also become part of this community, which means that any economies of scale that we have to ourselves, we can easily carry forward to them as well. So other than DJing, I think I'm done with my monologue. I'd love to open the floor up to some questions. I'm happy to answer anything, any questions any of you have. Again, many of you have met me one-on-one and in group sessions before, so let's jump right in.
Hi, thanks, Harley. Ken Wong from Guggenheim. I just wanted to touch on kind of that unified management platform that you talked about. First, in terms of enterprise pain points, how significant was that? How would you rate that in terms of things that you're solving for them to potentially move more upstream? And then second, how does that impact potentially the subscription fee they pay you? And then perhaps more importantly, does that aggregate into what they might have to pay you for platform fees to surpass that $800,000 threshold?
Yeah. So in terms of your question, I think the pain points that we heard loud and clear from Plus merchants were some of the obvious ones: multi-location, multi-store, multi-language. If you were Lisa Mattresses and you were running 12 stores 2 years ago on Shopify Plus, you actually had 12 different admins. So there was some low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit was they need one centralized OS to run the entirety of their operations. That was sort of some of the easy ones. Some of the other ones were obviously things like increased API calls. They wanted to know when they have a massive flash sale. We sort of famously host some of the biggest flash sales literally in the history of retail, like Yeezy or Kylie. They want to make sure that from a performance perspective, we stack up there. I think the fact that we now have a product that's specific for them will do 2 things. One, I think we'll hear less complaints, which Lauren Paddleford and his team will greatly enjoy. But secondly, and more importantly, I think they will begin to view Shopify as a place to transition more and more of their business. This idea that if you're a small business on Shopify, almost all your business is being done on Shopify. If you're a very large retailer or a very large brand, Shopify is one component of a number of other components as well. More and more, we want to become the component. Are we ever going to build ERP? Probably not. I actually think that more and more what we're seeing is, particularly from these native direct-to-consumer brands, Tommy John Underwear, for example, or a Bombas or Allbirds, they actually don't want ERP. They're figuring out ways that they actually don't require a massive $12 million 8-month installation from SAP, Oracle, or Demandware or Salesforce. So there are some things we are going to do, some things we're not going to do. Your final point, which I forget. Sorry, I remember. Yeah. So let's just talk about plus pricing, because I'm sure all of you want to ask. The balance of value to cost on Shopify Plus is so far weighted on the side of value. Can we increase price? Is there price elasticity of demand? Unequivocally. Is it the best deal in enterprise commerce? Probably. That is completely intentional. We believe that when you talk to these CEOs of these companies, you talk to someone like Uri Minkoff, who's CEO of Rebecca Minkoff, he's coming to us because he wants to be able to launch Instagram commerce right away as soon as it's announced, or Apple Pay as soon as it's announced. But he's also doesn't want to pay a portion of his revenue to Demandware. He wants to feel there's a fair trade, a fair balance of revenue. And so there will be an opportunity again in the future where we will increase pricing for Plus. I don't think the time is right now. In the same way that Shopify in the early days was in land grab mode, Plus is in land grab mode. Shopify is 15 years old, Plus is barely 5 years old. So I do think there is a chance to increase eventually. I don't think the time is right for that right now. Now, that being said, I do want to give ourselves a little bit of credit that almost every year since inception, we've changed the pricing on Plus. We went from $9.95 to $2,000, from $2,000 to 25 basis points with a cap. We then removed the cap. So we are making incremental changes, but we're not doing so in a way that scares the entire merchant base. Yeah. You can yell. It's a small room. Yeah. I mean, look, you heard today that multi-currency is now available platform-wide. That was a Plus-only feature. Now it goes to everyone. Secure checkout initially, when this is many years ago, was only Plus. We realized that is something that every merchant needs as well. So there's a really good balance of what do most people need most of the time, and what are specific features and functionality that should rest entirely with the Plus merchants. I think that, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of those emails from Plus merchants saying, I really need you guys to fix this, or I need you to do this other thing. We will get there, but I think a lot of things they're asking for, again, in the case of ERP, someone told them that they need ERP. When you actually dig into actually what they want to do with it, they can do most of that with Shopify. And I think the danger there is it's the faster horse versus building them a car. They're coming to us in some cases and saying, we want the faster horse. And we're saying, actually, what you want is a vehicle, is a car. So I think we're careful to balance those sort of things. I think the beauty and the what I like most about our business model is that we have a really, really wide top of funnel. And anyone that has an idea in the shower in the morning or wherever in their car, sitting in traffic, going to a job they hate, and they want to start a business, does so with Shopify. And not all will succeed, but the ones that do over time will become the next Allbirds or Bombas or any of those type of companies. And as long as the ones that succeed offset the cost of the ones that don't, we got a great business. So you've seen this. You've seen what this sort of segmentation happen in our industry, where either people have gone completely upmarket or they've gone completely downmarket in some cases. We actually think that we can stretch in both directions, but that takes incredible amount of focus and frankly, discipline. We reorged the company, 2 years ago so that we can focus on different audiences. Prior to that, we really were a functional business. Every single engineer reported up to our CTO and so on and so forth. By having these sort of what we call product lines or more well-known business units, it means that different parts of the business can focus on different audiences. And I think the only way to actually serve Joe entrepreneur who's sitting at a coffee shop and also serve Procter & Gamble is actually have different audiences within the company. On the Instagram side, it's a great question. Ultimately, if I were, some of you know my sort of story. I was one of the first merchants on Shopify. I was store 136. It was 2006. I was in law school, had to pay for my tuition. I set up a store on Shopify and I had an online store and I paid for law school and business school. If I were starting today, immediately I'd have 4 or 5 channels already set up. I would try Pinterest, I would try Instagram, I'd try Facebook. I may even try Amazon or eBay, but I also, of course, would have my online store because I would own the customer relationship and the profit margin. I think over time, what we will see is we will see a lot more different channels. I think that's a good thing. It's important, though, for us that every time a channel is announced, that we are announced as a partner for that channel so that when merchants hear about Instagram commerce, they know they can get that right from Shopify. It's important also that we have economics built in because we don't necessarily want to give up the take rate on GMV, and so we do. We go to these channels. We say we have an unfair advantage on the coolest products on the internet. If you want access to these products, here's the deal we have to make together, and we're happy with the deals we're making. But I would suspect that you and I have talked about this exact example. MySpace would have been a big channel for us 10 years ago, and no one knows who they are today. And in 10 years, Instagram may still be a good channel, or it may not. We are really becoming channel agnostic to the extent that in 10 years, there may be 50 channels that open. And what that means is more complexity for merchants, which means the value of Shopify to simplify that complexity, to have one place to run the entirety of that business increases. So I like our positioning, but every time a new channel is announced, Toby and I are excited by it. It means more GMV, more sales for merchants. Hi. Just gonna bring you mics so other people can hear. Oh, great.
Okay, so looking at your opportunities ahead, how do you balance building from within, partnering with your large ecosystem, or potentially acquiring? And what is the acquisition strategy at Shopify?
Yeah. Thoughtful, very, very thoughtful, and it's not an excuse. It's just we've seen a lot of companies that go into this crazy acquisition mode and they get completely distracted on integrations, and you don't really know, like when the whole thing is done, no one really knows who they are and what they're doing. From a product perspective, this has been the case since day one. Shopify's core offering, whether it's Plus or small merchants, will do what most merchants need most of the time. Anything that goes beyond that, we will always look to the third-party ecosystem to build on top of. At a certain point, some of those products will cross the threshold, and they will become things that most people need most of the time. And that's when we will decide we should probably do this ourselves. It was the case with payments, case with shipping, case with capital. Capital is an interesting one. I mean, a lot of you in the room know about companies like Cabbage that have existed for a long time, I think out of Atlanta. Cabbage was offering cash advances to our merchants. At a certain point, it dawned on us that we have more information than Cabbage has. We have way more money than they have on the balance sheet. And we can tie it to Shopify payments, so our ability to recollect is very high. Our default rate becomes very low. So what happens at that point is we go to these third parties and we say, here's what we're going to do because it's necessary for the evolution of our platform. There's still going to be room for you to continue to build. In terms of the acquisition side, we've done, I don't know, under a dozen acquisitions, I think. I don't know if Amy's in the room or Joe's in the room, but a dozen, something like that. Over the years, every single one of them has, for the most part, has been talent or some product. But for the most part, it's been talent acquisitions. Obviously, with Handshake, which is our most recent acquisition, it gives us a great product. I think Handshake is one of the greatest companies in B2B. B2B was something that we were already working on inside of Shopify Plus. We felt it was a good market for us. It was a good product for us. But we have the greatest B2B e-commerce minds on the planet now who work inside of Shopify Plus thinking about how to create a brand new vertical of business for us. So I would say that we've been thoughtful. Will we go and do a massive acquisition one day? Maybe. But right now, we're able to buy companies that are 10, 20, 30 people. Some come with products, some don't. And if you go back to one of our first acquisitions, like Jet Cooper, Satish was the founder. Satish runs all of retail and channels for us. We're also acquiring some of the greatest entrepreneurs on the planet who feel like their job the day after the acquisition is better than the day before. And I think we'll continue doing that. And so you'll see more, I think. Sorry, sir.
Thanks, Harley. Mark Skatovich with Rosenblatt. You recently talked about a big CPG coming onto the Shopify platform, and I'm just curious sort of what the long game is for them. I mean, near term, I assume there's obviously branding opportunities there, but is this sort of a augmentation of potential sell-through that they're now getting on Amazon? Could you ultimately see this as sort of a DTC model for them where they kind of pull their subscriptions off Amazon and direct to the consumer? But any tangible examples that
Yeah.
you can give to would be helpful.
Look, what's happening with CPGs is not something I anticipated. What initially happened was some of the what's happening with CPGs is not something I could have imagined. DTC is a different story. On the CPG side, what started happening was their CMOs were calling us a month and a half before Super Bowl or a month and a half before Christmas and saying, we want to set up a great store for Budweiser to sell T-shirts, or Oreo wants to do custom Oreos, or Lay's potato chips wants to put your face on a bag of chips with the Lay's Smile campaign. That's what initially happened. These were these marketing campaigns, and I mean, they were staying on. They weren't shutting down their stores, but they were marketing campaigns. That has shifted. That has shifted to the extent that now what's happening is we're seeing appliance makers like Whirlpool Appliances creating brand new pieces of hardware, and actually, instead of going to Best Buy or Sears, they're actually creating Swash.com on Shopify Plus, and they're selling direct to consumer. Why do they do that? Well, one, they own the margin. Two, they have a brand new relationship directly with the consumer. And three, when they want to sell pods for those dry cleaning machines, those pods are sold directly from the CPGs. So I'm not actually sure this is a fad. I think this will be steady state, where CPGs will begin to look at what's our distribution channel. We're obviously going to put it in Walmart still. We're still maybe going to Amazon, but let's also have our own direct-to-consumer business. And what we've done with some of them, this is going to be the least surprising thing you've heard all day, is some of them are not that easy to work with. My general counsel's in the room, and he's the greatest general counsel on the planet, but he's got to deal with like teams of 500 lawyers talking about all types of terms, and we remind them that Shopify's $2,000 a month, Shopify Plus at least. So we are now creating business relationships with them that is easy for them to onboard. So Nestle, for example, we did one big store with Nestle, and now any other brands under the Nestle umbrella can easily set up Shopify Plus stores without having to piss off my GC, which is really great for him and me. And we're doing that at scale now across a bunch of different CPGs. So there's a team inside of Shopify Plus, the CPG team, and their job is to work directly with them. Just like there's a regulated industry team that's focused on regulated industries like cannabis or anything else in that category. But is it surprising? It sounds like it's a normal evolution. The reason the CPGs had to go through the major resellers, the retailers, was they had distribution. Shopify and e-commerce and the internet gives the CPGs distribution. So I think we'll see more of that too. It's still a pretty small part of our business. Of the 5,300 merchants on Shopify, most of them are not CPGs. And frankly, when you hear me speak, I speak a lot more about the Fashion Novas of the world than I do about Neutrogena.com. Yeah, yes, sir.
Philosophically, when you're adding all these services, fulfillment or lending or whatever it is, how do you think about which ones are going to be loss leaders, which ones are going to be break even, which ones you're going to try to profit on? Just sort of high level, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say it's a sequencing of events. I think for payments, again, those of you that are familiar with the story, you know that when we launched Shopify Payments, the idea was not to make money. The idea was Shopify's onboarding process was incredibly elegant. My grandmother could build a store on Shopify in 15 minutes, just knowing how to use email. But there was one friction point in the onboarding process, which was go get a merchant account. We didn't like the fact that some third party was dictating how someone was onboarded. And so we initially built payments not to make money with, but actually just to make the onboarding much easier. It then turned out the payments is a pretty good business. So it often will depend. Shipping and the fulfillment network is way too early to tell. Capital, of course, we're able to make money from day one. So it would really depend. There are some ones that work really well for us. I mean, Fraud Protect is not something that many of you ask me about, but it's a fascinating part of our business, or it's a fascinating new product or merchant solution we give to our merchants, because we're able to see 218 million buyers bought something off a Shopify store last year. We're able to see more transactions than most platforms. Therefore, the algorithm to determine whether or not an order is fraudulent or not, it's great, and we can give them that peace of mind. Can we charge for it? Of course we can. So I wouldn't say necessarily that some will be loss leaders, some will be profit generators. I would say that some of them will be in different, there'll be a sequencing of events for different merchant solutions. And some we may start with something that is a break even, and others we may decide from day one, like Capital, we're gonna make money with this thing, especially because we're financing it off our own balance sheet.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I think POS took a lot of mind share during the keynote today. And I wanted to ask, as you think about the flywheel that Amy showed us earlier, expanding the funnel of bringing more merchants onto Shopify, do you think you're going to start to see more customers that are brick and mortar only today start with Shopify because they can buy the retail kit? And then if they have plans to move online in the future, maybe it expands the funnel that way as well. And would the company ever target those types of customers specifically as their customer acquisition strategy?
I think we eventually will get there, but you're assuming that businesses in the future start offline and eventually move online. I'm not really sure I fully agree with that. I think that if you're starting a business in 2019, you're probably going to start by setting up an online store and figuring out if you have product market fit. And then you may decide to do a brick and mortar store, as is the case with a lot of the DTC brands that are on Shopify. But I do think that it's a new demographic for us to go after. In terms of your question, which is that who are we after right now? Frankly, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit on our platform when it comes to physical retail. For a long time, we gave them a good product, good piece of software with a white-labeled piece of hardware. That's over now. The software that we are now putting out to the market from a point-of-sale perspective is the best software out there. The hardware, we are one of very few companies on the planet that are building their own point-of-sale hardware. So I think that we have, at least for the foreseeable future, we have a strategy which is, let's figure out of the 820,000 merchants, how many of them are using point-of-sale systems they don't like, and let's give it to them. Because the migration from their existing cloud point-of-sale system to ours will be seamless. It's a click of a button, they get the hardware kit. We already have their inventory. We already have all their customer data. We have their marketing analytics all built in on the online side. It's really easy for them to extend to the offline side as well. That's where we're going to start on point-of-sale. I think the reason that you heard a lot of discussion around point of sale today is I think historically people looked at Shopify as e-commerce first and point of sale as being an appendage. And now we have a great team. You Arpon leading on product. Ian Black, we brought over from Uber Eats North America to run sort of the business of retail and point of sale. We never had that before. So I think that the reason that you're hearing a lot of attention on point of sale is we're getting serious about this now. And I think it is a big opportunity. Particularly to the question earlier around the future retail being retail everywhere, channels everywhere. Physical retail is going to be an important part of that. And you're seeing that now. Walk through Soho. When you walk through Soho, it's all these brands, most of them are on Shopify, who started online and then decided to build a brick and mortar store. And we've joked on stage a little bit about the fact that sometimes it's cheaper to build a brick and mortar store than to advertise on Google or Facebook. That's mind-blowing. That's a brand new phenomenon, a brand new insight. So we think physical retail is important. Just grab the mic behind you. Thanks.
In your keynote, you shared that something like 25% of merchants, 200,000 of them have come from partners, and then that 64 billion of GMV has come from partners, and then 100 billion of GMV has just been generated overall.
Over 100 billion.
So that would sort of imply that a lot of the GMV is coming from the partners. Is there a particular dynamic that we should be aware of?
Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot of it. I would say partners bring on the merchants that are referred by partners typically are higher GMV merchants. That's not surprising. If you were going to go to an agency or a developer or a big marketing company and you're going to say, I need an online store, you've already agreed, you've already committed to the fact that you're going to make an investment in it. If you're just trying things out, you're aspirational, you're probably going to do it by yourself sitting on your couch. So it's not too surprising. What I think is more important is that a lot of if you look at Shopify Plus, for example, a lot of the Shopify Plus partners were people who upgraded or sort of migrated from Shopify Core to Shopify Plus. And what we've done in the last year and a half to 2 years or so, Lauren will speak more about this, is we're now looking after specific enterprise e-commerce agencies who I would say even 24 months ago would have said, yeah, we can't use Shopify Plus. We only do massive installations. What they're now realizing is that they can do those massive installations, massive builds on Shopify Plus, where they can make the same amount of money they always did, plus they can actually deliver more value to their customers because their clients are saying, hey, I heard about Apple Pay or Shopify Pay, I want it right now, and they can get it within a matter of seconds. So that's not a change. Since we started the partner program, we saw that partner-referred merchants tend to have higher GMV. Yeah.
How do you determine what's your set of priorities between capital, payments, international, retail, fulfillment, future opportunities? So basically, how are you prioritizing your capital?
Yeah. So some of them are on existing things that we need to just make sure are best in the world at. We have to be world-class at things like checkout. We have to be the best in the world at things like inventory management. We have to be the best in the world at allowing merchants to view their entire business. Other things are a little bit more aspirational. So obviously, SFN is something we've been thinking about internally and developing from a strategy perspective for quite some time. Obviously, Thomas joining us is a huge win for us. But what happens at the beginning of every year, together with our executive team, and certainly led by our incredible CFO, we decide where our investments are going to be made. And then it's a responsibility of us, along with those particular product lines, to come back and say, hey, I'm seeing more growth than I thought I would, and then we can reallocate. So I think as opposed to a lot of companies who kind of set it and forget it for a 12-month or a fiscal year period, we're constantly evaluating new opportunities so that we can reallocate resources as needed. And we've done that a number of times over the years. So that's kind of how we do it. There's not any necessarily specific mathematical formula where it's 20% here, 40% there. It's a matter of here's how much we believe we want to invest this year. Here are the opportunities. And any of the general managers of each of those product lines can come to us and say, we've seen more success than we thought we would. We actually want to spend more on that. Yeah.
Thanks for taking the question. So you mentioned on the Q1 call, strong plus ads and can be attributed to a maturing sales team. What are some of the metrics you look at, and where's the sweet spot, and how far are we from that?
For what? For the sales team?
Yeah, for plus.
I mean, obviously, every plus sales hacker has goals. We're not necessarily a big variable compensation company, but there are certain metrics based on how many they can sell. Obviously, if someone's working on a deal like with the Ontario government, the British Columbia government, that's going to be a bigger deal. It's going to take a lot more time than someone calling up and saying, I want to sign up for Shopify Plus. But that's something that we constantly look at. So in terms of it's number of merchants, it's GMV, it's revenue per merchant. A merchant that comes and takes every service from us is a bit different than a merchant who's just using us for a marketing campaign, although they still have to sign a 12-month contract. But that's the way we look at it. And what I meant by that in the earnings call was that what Lauren and I are thinking a lot about right now is we want our product, the Plus product, to catch up to the maturity of the Plus go-to-market commercial strategy, which it started as a commercial strategy. And we want the product side to catch up. And years ago, some of you may recall, we made an acquisition, a company called Boltmade out of Waterloo. Waterloo came on and effectively became the Shopify Plus R&D team with great leadership, great engineers who had spent a lot of time building for enterprise. We were not forged in the fires of enterprise, so we needed that sort of thing. Yeah. Katie, how are we doing on time? Okay.
Thanks, Harley. Igal Arunian from Wedbush. So you started off kind of highlighting that in the past, whether merchants or partners used to see more options in the marketplace. You mentioned BigCommerce, Volution, CMSs. Those are all things that are still in the marketplace. Adobe talked up Magento and Marketo a lot yesterday on their earnings call. Can you talk about what you're seeing in the marketplace that makes you feel like there's less, not more now? And
that's a bit of a layup, isn't it?
How does headless fit into that as well?
Look, I know that those companies still exist, but I mean, a lot of those companies have, particularly the ones that were quote unquote Shopify competitors, like BigCommerce, Revolution, they've moved up market. We don't see them at all. I mean, I'm not saying that to be cute. I'm saying that truly because we don't see them on deals. When it comes to the enterprise platforms, whether it's Demandware, ATG, Hybris, Magento, IBM does have a product called WebSphere. No one talks about it, but it does exist. We don't necessarily, so we don't do RFPs. We don't participate in RFPs. I'm not going golfing with anybody. I don't like to golf. I'm not going golfing with someone for some big corporate event. I wear a t-shirt every day. They're not gonna let me in anyway. So we just play in a different ball game. If a big brand comes and says, we're gonna evaluate Demandware versus Magento versus Shopify Plus, we don't play. What we find ends up happening is at some point, someone, usually not the CTO of the company, because the CTO often of those brands want to protect their engineering teams. Sometimes the CMO or the CEO comes to us and says, hey, I don't know what the heck we're doing here. We'd like to at least consider Shopify Plus. And we often win a lot of those deals. So I think that what we're seeing from, I don't know what's happening in Magento. Magento has been a mess for a couple of years. I don't see any innovation coming from the enterprise platforms. I'm not saying that to poo-poo them. I haven't seen much innovation there. Now, that's not to say that we don't have competition. We absolutely have competition. If you don't want to use Shopify, you can cobble together 3 or 4 or 5 different solutions, including cloud point of sale, some e-commerce open source provider, plus something that allows you to sell on social media platforms. You can use Seller Central on Amazon, and you can cobble it together. But our hypothesis is that then you become a human synchronization tool. And we think what merchants want is a retail operating system. And that's what we offer.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much,
Thanks
Charlie.
so much,
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, I'd like to introduce the man who's personally responsible for building Shopify Plus from the ground up, Lauren Paddleford.
Hi. They told me to advance a slide, but like I don't have any slides. All right, cool. We'll just leave it there. I love following Harley because he answers like all of the questions I have to answer, and so I just can sit here and wait now because like you asked him all the plus questions. Look, before I get to Q&A, I guess I'll just we've been doing this plus thing now for about 5 years. When we first started, everyone just laughed at us and was like, "There's no possibility you can take Shopify up market." And I mean, I guess we did. It's been really interesting, actually. I think we've seen a lot of trends that are super encouraging, and I look at every day, and I spend time a lot with founders and with these brands, and they tell such an interesting story. I'll describe it like this. I think there's kind of two markets in the world right now. If you're a large DTC or a fast-growing brand, you're either in the new market or you're in the old market. The new market's characterized by a value set that the old market doesn't have. They care first and foremost about brand, customer experience. They're driven by marketing, right, and customer acquisition. The old market, right, is IT-driven, right, and profitability-oriented. And so you see this bifurcation happening more and more. It's actually just speeding up faster and faster and faster. So if you look at the customers that we have on Shopify and on Plus, we have the group who grew up digital, and they value a totally different set of things: speed, agility, and experimentation. They've never contemplated starting a company so they could hire IT people. Right? They wanted to start one so they could go fast and they could have a brand that they were proud of and they could go to the market and it would be exciting. And they don't, really understand the rules of retail because they keep violating them and doing things that everyone says you can't do in the retail markets. And they like that. That's why they are so fast growing. It's why, Katie said it this morning, we have some of the fastest growing brands ever on Shopify. And you don't go from 0 in sales to $1 billion in sales in 7 years because you did it the way everyone did it for the 50 years. So we have this kind of unique reality. So in the old enterprise, you also have a group of customers now who are also realizing that the time box is ticking. Right? They've got to reinvent themselves very, very quickly. They actually have to become much more like the new enterprise, or the new enterprise will just eat their lunch. Right? And you're seeing that happen whether it's in CPGs, right, with new startup brands just sucking down massive amounts of CPG GMV, where you're seeing it in new retail brands, the high growth digital DTCs now going brick and mortar and building these crazy experiential environments. And so you get this other group who's now in hyper restructure mode. And we kind of are the interesting beneficiary of a lot of this. It's because we have, what I internally refer to as all the cool kids, right? We got all the cool kids on Shopify. If you're building a DTC brand of any scale, you started it on Shopify. I mean, it's kind of where we are today. But if you're also trying to retransform your big legacy brick and mortar retailer, the place you go is where all the things you're trying to look like are. And so we have that in our pipeline now too, which is really fascinating. So I kind of jokingly, like, if you're not in one of those two groups, you should totally buy one of those other systems, right? Because it's not going to work anyway, so it's a difference. So I think it's been a really fascinating couple of years. The system's grown a lot. The customers are just blindingly innovative. It's the rules. They just don't understand the rules of retail. And so they keep reinventing them, and I think it's great, and it drives us forward, and it forces us to create products that we never envisioned. It forces us to free our ability to create products that we then give to them, and they're like, holy crap, I could use that and go do something really cool. And so there's this crazy symbiosis between us and our customers, which I think led to a lot of some of the product announcements you heard today. Was just us with them for the last 3 to 5 years, watching their entrepreneurial journey, listening to where their pains are and being like, oh yeah, we can solve that. Yeah, we can solve that. right? To free them to keep doing innovation at scale. How do you maintain nimbleness, speed, agility, innovation when you're $1 billion, when you have hundreds of retail locations, when you're transforming a multi-billion-dollar traditional retailer? Right? You have to build a different kind of platform. And I think that's, what we're trying to do at Plus, what we've been trying to do, and we're gonna keep doing it. So I'm I was really excited today. I mean, Plus this is the first kind of true main stage opportunity Plus has had to announce something, and I think we announced something we're very, very proud of, and gives our customers a huge amount of power that they've never had before, that they've really wanted, and it keeps freeing the runway for them to keep innovating commerce and reinventing how this whole thing's supposed to work. So I'm happy to take any questions Harley didn't answer, or could spend my time correcting Harley. That's probably a bad idea.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, Ken Wong from Guggenheim. Just a quick question. First, perhaps on your sales force, just wondering how large is that sales force? Where do you think you need to scale that to achieve the goals that you guys are looking for? And then second, in terms of getting the product up to snuff, I think Harley said that you're trying to get the product to catch up to the sales force. Is that more a matter of getting customers to recognize they need to streamline some of their processes on the enterprise side, or is it you guys building up the functionality to match what some of these enterprise platforms have?
Yeah, so okay, that's a good question. Salesforce, I mean, the entire sales team is north of 100 folks at this point. We have a very, very different sales model, which I think is one of the things we started right off early, is we went to market and said, we're not going to do this the way that the enterprise has always done this. We're going to go fast. Customers don't really want to spend time in the sales cycle. They want to spend time on their companies and on their brands and doing what they want to do. And so instead of optimizing for, the golf games and steak dinners and all that kind of stuff, we optimized to value and created a sales process that was primarily inside. So the vast majority of the sales that we do are done over the phone, with the exact same customers that the other folks in the enterprise seem to have to spend months with in person. Right? It just has never been a thing we've had to adjust to. Also, the marketers are in charge now, and the marketers are a lot less tolerant of time wasting, it seems. And so they tend to go faster. They just want to innovate. They don't want to spend a lot of time, talking about stuff. So I think our opportunity remains that as we go global and spread out. We have a fairly good-sized commercial team in Australia and in Europe that's doing really well. And I think we'll continue to put commercial teams close to customers so that we can have that face-to-face in the way that we want to, versus just creating the giant enterprise sales org. To your second point, I'm not trying to build the enterprise. I think that's what they want us to do, is if we look like them, then they can win. But if we look, sound, and act differently, we become very problematic, right? Because they can't compare themselves to us. So from a product perspective, I'm not trying to recreate an enterprise platform. I'm trying to build a platform for the future of the enterprise to use. These are not your typical enterprise companies. Right? They might be big, but once you sit and talk to them, they act differently. They respond differently. Their interests are different. The way they use software is different. This is the same group of founders and innovators who don't go to hotels because they go to Airbnb, and they don't have cars because they buy Ubers or they rent Ubers. They look at software and they're like, why would I have this giant heavy thing? Can't it just do what I want? Right? I want to get the piece I want. So we have to build them that platform. So I think the comment around catching up is, they scaled fast. When we started Plus, the biggest customer on the platform was $10 million. The biggest customer on the platform is over $1 billion. That's only 4 years, right? Like these companies scaled fast into this system. So that's more what we're trying to catch up to, is their complexity moved much faster than our ability to build the software to keep up with it. And so we're getting there now. The new Plus is a huge step forward in that, allowing them to manage a business on Shopify instead of managing a single store. Once you get to a certain size, stores are tactics, right? They're just marketing activities, and they turn them on and turn them off when they need them for various things. They no longer are the central thing that they are. It's a channel, like offline is a channel, like mobile's a channel, like all these things. And so what they keep saying to us is, hey, we'd love to run the whole thing on you. Can you be the operating system for us? right? As we spin this out, we want to experiment, we want to do all this stuff. And so that's what the new Plus is doing, is giving them that central place where they can log in every day and be like, okay, great, I can manage all the stores now instead of having to go in and out really slowly or manage them, across that way. So I think we're getting there. There's a lot to go. As I said, they're innovative, and so they want lots of fun stuff that has never been thought about before. So we're working hard to keep up with them.
Would you say that the number of merchants who have to leave Plus because Plus can't support them since they've gotten so big has declined every year?
There is no customer that has to leave because of size. Size is not a constraint. As Harley alluded to, as you saw on main stage, the size of the platform is larger than any single merchant in the world. So there is no merchant that can outsize the platform. Now, some customers have very specific functionality they want that we may not provide at the moment, and so they choose someone else. But size is not a constraint. As you can see, you have billion-dollar merchants and multi-billion-dollar entities who are selecting us all the time. So, we don't see attrition because of size. Right behind us, the mic.
Could you help us get a sense of like the Plus merchant in the 90th percentile, so almost like the smaller Plus merchants? Could you help us get a sense of their GMV? And then a separate question is just how many Plus merchants could a given enterprise spin off for you? Like, Procter and Gamble, could they, be the parent of 30 people paying $2,000 a month?
So I'll answer the first question, and then I'll address the second. So the interesting part about Plus is when we first started, we really thought GMV was the driving factor of how people would use Plus. We saw it as, you have a lot of throughput, and so you must need Plus. What we learned is that's actually not the driving factor. The driving factor is complexity. You can have relatively small GMV merchants who have just complicated needs. And those, as we've developed, complexity is the driver. And so what you get now is actually a pretty vast spectrum of customers from a few 100,000 all the way up to billions, right? Using Plus because it solves the complexity challenges that they have. You get these giant conglomerated businesses, and so as Harley was alluding to, my perspective on them is very similar to Harley's with a slight twist. One of their biggest competitors is now the middle they've relied on for their whole lives, right? Walmart, Target are now their problem, not their advantage, right? Because Walmart and Target's problem is Amazon. And so Walmart, Target, all these brands, what they're trying to do is create their own house brands for everything because they can own that margin, they can own that. And so these CPGs now have a competitor who's also their path to a customer. Well, that's untenable in the long term. You've got to disintermediate all these middles and take the customer back. So what we see is CPGs using Plus, right, to experiment in direct-to-consumer. How do you go and own a direct-to-consumer relationship? You can start new brands that no one's ever thought about and do that. That was the swoosh example that Harley gave. You can take existing brands and do something innovative with them and try that. You can take just existing brands and take them out of the middle and try and go direct-to-consumer. So you see a lot. I spent a lot of time with the CPGs. You talk to them, and they start to sound like VCs. It's really interesting because they look at they're like, I got a portfolio of 250 brands. I don't think all of them are going to survive because either our middle is going to create a house brand, it's going to take it away from me, right? Or someone from the ground up who happens to use Shopify is just going to eat my lunch, right? And so I'm now trying to treat it like a portfolio and look at ways of optimizing their potential for success. And so they're giving a lot of power back to the brand managers. And they're saying to the brand managers, you act like these startup DTCs, try and disrupt us. And so then they look at us as, because that's where their competitors are, is on Shopify. They look at us and they're like, okay, great, I'm just going to use Shopify and I'm going to start innovating. And so the short answer is we have these kind of blanket agreements in some places, which it just allows them to spin as many brands as they need to spin, right, in a cost structure. But some of them hundreds of brands. But it's also not just the existing brands. They're trying new brands. They're experimenting as much as everybody else is experimenting. So it creates this really interesting vantage point for us to watch what is basically a totally new industry spawn itself, which is CPGs who are no longer trying to sell through the grocery chains or the big box stores, who are trying to go direct to consumer in subscription models or direct models or unique offerings, and they see Plus as their advantage in that because it's nimble and fast and they can spin it. Where am I going? Got one over there and one over here.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about where you draw the line on customization. So if you're talking to a large customer, I'm sure there's probably some customization you probably have to do for everybody, but how do you think about we'll go the extra mile for this customer to land them versus it's too much of an investment versus hey, maybe this is a cool product. Just curious, and maybe how many customers haven't you onboarded because they've asked for too much?
Yeah, we don't custom build for anybody. It's actually the thing I think. I alluded to this before. We look, sound, and act so different than what they're used to that it's part of their attraction to us. Is custom building software over the long term is a death sentence, right? Eventually you hit a point where it's unsustainable and you can't maintain this platform. And the sunk cost and the support debt is just so high that it's just no longer worth it no matter what you're getting paid. And so our approach has always been, we have a lot of APIs, we have a big ecosystem of apps, we've got a bunch of really amazing partners who can make Shopify do all kinds of things. We have not yet found a use case we can't solve for with that reality, but we have on a number of occasions said no to very large retailers who wanted us to custom build them their e-com platform. And our perspective is that's not the way the future of commerce is going to work, right? Custom building an e-com platform is not a thing anymore, right? Like that used to be the way you would do it because you were so unique. And you need nimbleness more than you need custom. You need speed more than you need the thing that is only valuable to you. And so our approach has been to say to customers, look, we think we can solve for your outcomes, the thing you're trying to do, without having to custom build you a platform. And we think that'll be more extensible, more upgradable, and more valuable over the long term. But if that's not what you want to do, okay, but we aren't a custom build shop. And so we're not building you features that only apply to you. We want to build features and product that apply to a large number of customers because we think that opens up our value proposition and opportunity. And so I'm actually really proud that we say no to customers on a regular basis because it's a bad strategy, but it is a strategy deployed by the traditional enterprise to lure in customers. I'll just build you what you want, right? Yeah, you're going to take 1,000 people for the next 5 years and charge them $50 million to do it. I'd rather them keep the $50 million, spend it on their brand, generate a truckload of revenue, and then make money that way, right? And so I think it's just a difference of philosophy and approach. So.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the progress with merchant solutions within the Plus space? Because obviously a lot of these larger merchants will tend to have enough scale that they could negotiate payments through other providers. And it seems like, could you talk a little bit about maybe Fraud Protect and if that's becoming a bigger driver to payments within the Plus and maybe the progress versus like 12 months ago?
Yeah. So I think that our approach is that ultimately we want to build you a product that's so powerful and feature rich that it's not about price anymore. And so when you have those scenarios, you absolutely have price-oriented payment gateways to the folks who are just out there cutting the floor out of the system. I think what's true is there's two things that customers very quickly realize. That won't last. So they're going to give you, probably a terrible analogy, but it's the mortgage-backed security, bait and switch model, right? It's like, I'm going to give you a really low upfront cost, and then quietly someday I'm going to turn the table and make this thing way more expensive because I can't run negative forever. So that's part of it. But our approach is to just make it really feature powerful. And so you think something like fraud. As we said, we transact so much. We see buyers across so many stores that our ability to detect fraud isn't exactly just about the fraud. What we can allow customers to do is take more orders because we can detect fraud at a higher rate. That's no longer just insurance. That's actually upping the number of sales a customer takes. That's super valuable. That's a product feature, not a price feature. And so what we look for is these opportunities to maximize feature robustness with cost effectiveness. We need to be cost conscious in gateways. Customers are trying to make money too. And I think we are. And so I think that balance allows us to go to customers and say, straight up, I will probably never be the cheapest in the market. And if that's what you want to optimize for, okay, great. But most of these new enterprise customers, these fast-growing brands, the reestablished brands, are trying to optimize for customer acquisition, not necessarily cost reduction. And so what we are trying to do is show them upticks in take, upticks in conversion, upticks in all this capability to acquire and keep customers versus just cutting their costs down. Right? That was the old way, is cut costs to the floor and sacrifice experience. Right? We want the experience to be great and still be cost effective. So I think what you've seen is increased adoption over time of merchant services because it's the best combination of best product in the world and rates that are effective.
For the CPG buyers that you've mentioned, are you seeing that Shopify being pulled higher into strategic, from a strategic sense, are you seeing more C-level involvement in the purchasing decision? Who's typically the buyer within a large CPG? Is it a brand manager? Is it the head of e-commerce operations? Is it going to the COO, CEO level? And how has that evolved over time? And how has that impacted the sales cycle into those types of larger customers?
Yep. So it's almost always the CMO. Right? The CMOs and their counterparts, whether it's heads of e-com, things like that, are almost always the driver of the conversation, regardless of the brand. So if you're talking about the Fortune 50, you're absolutely talking to their executive level because this is a strategic problem at the moment, right? They're trying to figure out how to alter their business in a way that allows them to remain competitive. Now, one of their strategies is buy all the guys that are disrupting them, right? So that's happening as well, as they're consuming all of the startup brands. But their other is to start acting like them. So we spend a lot of time with that. When you get slightly smaller than that, you have all the CEOs involved because it's their brand, right? This is a brand-driven conversation at this point. And so the brand is a C-level discussion. What we've been very lucky on, and also, but it lucky by design, is hasn't changed the sales cycle at all. The sales cycle is still fast, it's efficient, because my own experience over my own career, what I found is as you go up the executive scale, their tolerance for wasting time goes down. And so the sales cycles actually speed up because they just won't waste time, right? It's the middle layer that wants to just like hang out all the time. And so, as we go up market, it actually just gets like more efficient.
Using your framework of your customer profile of the cool kids and the old guard, can you just talk a little about the resources that the two kinds of customers require, given that one is sort of with you and pushing because they're really focused on scaling, and the other has both people and systems and architecture that needs to get displaced ultimately to really partner with you? And is the size of the prize of the latter really worth the effort?
I think what we see with the ones who are transforming their business is a complete willingness to change how they do things, right? One of the unique positions we get put in is this, you tell us how it's supposed to work, right? Because like we're at a loss now. We've tried and spent huge amounts of money and hired 7 VPs of e-commerce, and like we've never gotten it right. And so it's like maybe we just don't know what we're doing. And so they come, and the conversations are a lot more open than they are dictatorial, right? Which is fascinating to be in, because my own background is like old world enterprise software, where it was just like you were told what to do, right? It's just like do this, get out of our offices. Now they come and they're like, hey, we need to change it all. So it's also an opportunity to restack everything. They actually come to the table and they're like, you tell us the tech stack we need in the future. We'll toss the ERP, we'll toss our finance system, we'll toss our marketing system. Whatever is integrated to you is the thing we need to figure out, right? Which puts us in a really interesting position. Now, those projects are hard because they have so much legacy, right? But I think it's the combination of a willingness to change, right, which allows us to continue to go fast. And I think, that's why I call it's like, yes, the cool kids are on us, but the other group that's just as interesting and just as fun to be with is the reinventors. The ones who've looked at their business and said, we won't survive this way, so we're going to reinvent ourselves. And so let's go back to zero and start again. And yeah, it's going to be hard and painful, but death is also hard and painful. And so like hard and painful and alive is probably a better option than hard and painful and non-existent, right? And so I think, those, they more every day, right? I don't believe it, but like the retail apocalypse, right, has scared enough people into action as they've watched, their counterparts fall apart, and they don't want to be that. And this is part of they've watched their counterparts fall apart on the traditional enterprise. And so they're now going, well, we can't stay here. Everyone that stays here falls apart. We got to get off this ship. So we raise the flag and we're like, we're over here.
How do you see the role of CRM in the enterprise and kind of Shopify's responsibilities in that space over, 3 years or 10 years?
Yeah. Given that the enterprise is now dominated, whether you're like the new enterprise is dominated by CMOs. CMOs are brand and customer acquisition. Customer acquisition requires that you understand a customer, like your consumer, at a really deep level. So that data point, that data record of how your buyers act and interact is super critical because it allows you to build products that are personalized. It allows you to adapt. It allows you to interact with those customers. So there's lots of fun acronyms that enterprises throw around: CRM, CDP, all this kind of great stuff. I think the key point is how well do you understand your consumer? Because the better you understand them, the better you can create the experience that consumer wants, which then translates into higher conversion rates. So I think we have a responsibility to that. One of the greatest things about is our data record. Like we just have billions of transactional data points around customers and how they move around and what their interests are and how they buy and what they don't buy, like and timing, all this kind of stuff that we can use to help inform the products that we build, but also help our merchants better understand their customers so they can create experiences that help them convert at a higher rate. And so I think it's actually a really unique, highly defensible moat that we have is just the sheer volume of data we have about shoppers, right? And what they do and how they act. And we will continue to enhance that and make that more robust and help our customers interact with their customers in the way they want. Back there.
Yes. Has your experience with Plus been the same internationally as it's been in North America?
Okay, so there are obviously massive nuances to how people buy and sell things in different markets. So the cultures of markets are very different. The response has been the same in that large enterprises, fast-growing enterprises, have the same challenge set no matter where they are in the world. And so when we show up, we give them an option they've never had before, right? We show them a path to grow and scale up and to deal with complexity that they'd never contemplated before. And so the response, our efforts around the world have been going really well. And the response from the customers is, thank God someone's going to give us the platform that allows us to grow. I think our message is the same everywhere: is your platform should be an enabler, not an anchor. Right? And if it's an anchor, if you're think about it all day, if you think about your e-com platform all day, something's wrong, right? Because you should be thinking about your brand and marketing. And so this is what we're trying to get customers, and that's true no matter where you are. What we are trying to do is adapt to the sales motion and the structure and the cultural nuances that exist in each one of these markets so that we sell and interact and support and manage our customers in the way that feels natural and feels native to them. But the needs and the opportunity, I think.
Okay. Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Lauren. All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. So if everyone could be back in here at 2:50, we're going to start right away with our Chief Marketing Officer. Thank you. We're going to get started again. We have 2 more speakers today. I hope everybody got a little bit of coffee and dessert, and go ahead and get settled now. I will introduce our penultimate speaker. Our second to last speaker today is Jeff Weiser. Jeff is our Chief Marketing Officer. He joined a little bit over a year ago, and he is a creative force. He and his team have started a lot of the kind of new things you've hopefully seen around town if you came up from New York. So without further ado, let's welcome Jeff Weiser.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Katie, and thanks to all of you for coming. I didn't get coffee or dessert, but I did get a microphone, so that's a start. As Katie said, I'm the new Chief Marketing Officer at Shopify. I've been here just a little bit over a year. I haven't met a lot of you guys, so just for a little bit on my background, before Shopify, I was the Chief Marketing Officer of Shutterstock, which is a publicly traded tech company. And before that, I ran strategy and analytics departments at companies like Beachbody, which is known for P90X and Shakeology and other fitness products, as well as MySpace and Yahoo before that. Before I get into some details on our performance marketing and brand marketing programs at Shopify, I'll just ask you to take note of our disclosure on non-GAAP financial measures. One of the questions I get asked a lot as a newish member of the executive team is, why did you join Shopify? To me, it's a really great meeting of the minds. If you were here for Amy's presentation earlier, she talked about how the company operates on a set of flywheels or self-reinforcing loops. And that's really the right way to think about performance marketing. So to give you a sense of how our performance marketing operation works, I'll start by defining the terms. When I refer to performance marketing, I'm talking about advertising dollars we have in market that are designed to directly drive new merchants and whose results are quantified down to return on investment. That's distinct from other dollars we spend on brand marketing or on marketing G&A. And at the center of our performance marketing flywheel is the lifetime value model. So we start by having a really deep understanding of the lifetime economics of acquiring one merchant at a highly granular and segmented level, at minimum by their geography, their segment, and the channel of acquisition. At any given time, our flywheel is using marketing spend to drive new merchants into our ecosystem. We execute tests against the merchant's experience to grow their lifetime value. As their lifetime value increases, our marketing spend has become more profitable, which lets us invest more in performance marketing, driving still further merchants and more testing, which again increases spend. To give a deeper look into our lifetime value models, there are a set of merchant stages that they go through in their lifetime, and at each stage, we have a set of metrics we're trying to optimize to and a set of levers we have available for us to do it. So beginning with driving merchants to our site, we try to optimize to cost per session. And then throughout their conversion to becoming a lead, through their 14-day free trial, to when they choose pricing and packaging, retain on our subscription products, and adopt merchant solutions. Each of those stages is treated as a lever to be individually optimized. And when we achieve those optimizations, it's put prospectively in a forward-looking way into our lifetime value models to drive the flywheel. Taking a look at what the results of our flywheel have been, I'd like to show you some representative cohorts. One are merchants that we acquired in Q1 of 2016, and the other is merchants we acquired in Q1 of 2018. If you look at the red and orange bars, what they're showing is our day zero investment in performance marketing to acquire the merchants. And then the green and yellow bars, respectively, are showing the gross profit dollars created by those cohorts from Q1 2016 and Q1 2018, excluding the performance marketing spend itself. And what you can see is that we've recouped our performance marketing investment within 6 months, and by 3 years out, we're at over 400% of the initial investment in performance marketing. Something that's really notable here is that as our marketing investment and our merchant acquisition has scaled, notably the yellow bars are much bigger than the green bars, the return on investment has held flat. It's atypical to be able to scale your marketing spend and your acquisition without seeing a diminishment in return on investment, because marketing programs typically buy the most efficient, least expensive, most productive pieces of advertising first. So to be able to hold the return at that level of scale has been just a tremendous experience for us. In addition to our performance marketing operation, one of the areas of evolution that we've had over the last year is to start to move up the marketing funnel into brand marketing. Shopify, as you know, aspires to be an 100-year company, and in order to do so, we must over time become a household name. Now today, if you were to take the US general population and ask them how many of them have heard of Shopify, only 2% of them would be able to name Shopify as a business that you would use to start your own business. Even when we zero in on our target segment, small and medium businesses, that number only grows to 4%. Now, the numbers are higher in an aided sense, meaning if we prompt people and say, have you heard of Shopify? We have 31% aided awareness among general population and 41% among small and medium businesses, but it obviously shows that there's room for growth. And through our new investments in brand marketing and Shopify Studios, we believe we can create that awareness that then seeds and provides a halo for the performance marketing flywheel that I just described. Now, internally, Shopify has always had a very good sense of what it stands for as a purpose-driven org designed to make commerce better for everyone. One of the interesting challenges over the last year for the marketing program was how do we represent this as an external-facing message that would resonate with the general population? The insight that drives the company's new brand position is that 21st century commerce is caught in an economic trap. We're told we live in a time of unprecedented opportunity. Industries are being replaced and disrupted. New tools are at our disposal. We're more connected than ever. It's supposed to be the age of opportunity, and media has certainly created the impression that entrepreneurship is thriving. But when we dig into the data, we find that this opportunity may not be reality for most people. As Toby mentioned earlier, startup rates are lower than they've been in 40 years. Power is increasingly concentrated in the hands of a small number of large global corporations. People are less likely to move than they ever were before for a new job opportunity, and education simply isn't keeping pace with economic change. And in developing markets where people lack power and equality, opportunities are that much more limited. Monopolies, social stasis, inequality, skills gaps, these are four walls that make up the economic trap I described. Shopify's goal is to establish itself as the true partner to those seeking independence and breaking out of that trap. And there's some good news. To combat the four walls of the economic traps, we see four offsetting walls of independence, forces of independence, I should say. Where we have monopolies, we see entrepreneurs pursuing new niches and new markets. Where people feel constrained by their corporate jobs and their corporate environments, being independent lets them take back control of their work-life blend. Where there's economic inequality, owning your own business puts you in the driver's seat over your earnings. And where there's education and skills gaps, we know that running your own business gives you the kind of education you could never achieve in a classroom. So the way we've distilled our brand purpose is that Shopify exists to unlock the power of commerce for those seeking independence. This is our heart center, and it's the premise of everything we do in our brand marketing. And for the first time, we're now taking this narrative to market. Our first campaign is live in 12 North American markets. We're executing it as a test where we will read the lift in those markets as compared to control markets that don't receive the brand treatment. And the premise of the campaign is pretty simple. It's that making stuff is easy. Every one of us has been doing it since we were children. There's lots of places to do it online. But making something into a business, that's hard. And so the theme for our first campaign is Shopify. Let's make you a business. Shopify has the tools and support you need to run a legit, fully thriving business. It's good for side hustles, but it's amazing for actual hustles. Let's take a look at some of the campaign creative. Two things that we're doing a little bit differently than in the past is one, expanding our channels. So in this campaign, we're using out-of-home, television, digital video, radio, and social media in addition to our traditional digital channels. And we're also trying to create both awareness and functional understanding of what our products and services do. This billboard's a pretty good example of that functional awareness imperative, where we say, turn what you're into into a business. Shopify, let's make you a business. Your mom should be your first customer, not your only customer. Shopify, let's make you a business. Here's an example of how some of these executions work together at a larger scale. Let's make what you do for fun what you do for a living. Shopify, let's make you a business. Let's make your family proud, or prove them wrong. We don't know what kind of relationship you have. Shopify, let's make you a business. And of course, being Shopify, we weren't content to just use the existing media units that are out there. We felt that we wanted to hack the system. So our campaign includes one unique out-of-home execution that we think could outlive this particular moment in time. Most people see empty storefronts as a nuisance. Where they saw a problem, we saw an opportunity for imagination. Our That Business storefronts are live in 10 markets, and they say things like, that business you think could be huge, could be here. That business you're not sure how to start, could be here. The idea is, of course, to allow prospective merchants to envision their own ideas come to life in a brick and mortar setting. It's also a strangely efficient way to buy out-of-home advertising that the rest of the media landscape may not have discovered yet. I'll also let you guys take a look at our first TV and digital video ad.
The world's favorite new drink doesn't exist yet.
Give that a try.
With Shopify, it can. Shopify, let's make you a business.
Thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with us. I'll be happy to take any questions the group has.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. That chart you showed on the cohort profitability and time to return, I'm trying to reconcile that with Toby's comments earlier in the day that it's getting harder to get customers on Google and Facebook. Nature of DTC acquisition is changing. Can you help me understand why, even at scale, you're not seeing that diminishing marginal return or utility on that spend? Is it?
Yeah, well, I think Toby was probably referring to. The good news is Toby's in the room. He can speak if he wants to. But I think that Toby's referring to a different context. I don't think he's referring to our own marketing, and certainly secular trends are also at play, not just the return on your advertising dollars. But if you look at our merchants' advertising, we have lately seen a trend where what used to go to search and social media, and frankly carried a little bit of a measurement premium, in the sense that people were paying a little bit extra to be able to get direct measurement of how it was performing, is starting to swing back towards more traditional forms of advertising and using new ways to measure it. You know, you heard me say earlier, we're also exploring other forms of advertising, but you know, because of our performance marketing flywheel, even in the existing channels we've been in, we've been able to hold that ROI. But you know, you can't really look at any one of those things in a vacuum. It's also in the context of secular trends, and those have been good for Shopify as well.
Hi, it's Mark Skotovich with Rosenblatt. Curious on the 12 markets that you picked, sort of what was your thinking around those markets and sort of how that may or may not sort of expand, and when that sort of expands beyond those 12.
Yeah, great question. The model that we're using, even in brand marketing, is not dissimilar to what I shared in performance marketing, where you put dollars in market, and if it achieves a margin standard, then you do more of the same until such time as it can't achieve a reasonable ROI. And of course, in the background, you work like hell to improve the customer lifetime, or in our case, the merchant lifetime, so that even less performing media can still have that ROI. And so the model is basically you try something out, and if it works, you scale it further. The 12 markets we're in represent major North American cities. They were chosen in part because they have similar control cities we're able to benchmark against. But to the extent it works, I think you'll see it roll out more broadly.
Over here. Okay, great. Thanks for taking my question. I'm just curious, in regards to your partner program for referring merchants and stuff like that. Have there been any, what's the update or what changes do you have for that in terms of the qualifications of the partners, as well as even the incentive program for partners for when they refer new merchants? It wasn't that long ago when you like type in Shopify on YouTube, you get a lot of like shady looking guys saying, we can get you on Shopify, be a merchant, you can make a lot of money and all that stuff. And then a lot of those merchants flame out. So I'm just curious in terms of what's been done for that for this coming year. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too deep right now into our product roadmap for partners referring merchants. Suffice to say that like a lot of marketing programs, we use affiliate marketing and other types of marketing referrals through our value-added partners as part of the program. But in terms of specifically what the compensation scheme will be for those folks or what the rule book will be into the future, I won't go into much more detail on that right now.
So we heard a lot today about international opportunities. I'm just curious how the marketing metrics look and how we're thinking about investments internationally and how that should impact maybe some of the cohorts that you just laid out.
Yeah, great question. International, very, very early days. We know there's a significant burden on localization and finding product market fit for things to really take off. So, even the metrics we're seeing today, which to the extent we spend behind them, you can be comfortable with because we keep that lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, as I described in the flywheel. We only spend to the extent that that's working. But whatever I were reading in terms of the profitability of a given merchant today, which is what in turn drives the amount we spend to acquire them, I would not take that as the long-term indicator as what they could be worth anyway, because we're still developing out our product and finding that fit.
So just in terms of the lifetime value levers, can you maybe talk about some areas where you're seeing improvement, whether it's retention by a broader suite of products or you've got conversion, like any areas where you've seen that improvement such that you've been able to spend up even higher to what are higher LTVs?
Yeah, great question. We are testing at any given time across every single one of those areas. So in terms of driving cost per session to be lower, we're testing our ad targeting. We're testing our ad copy execution and creative, right? Once people hit our landing pages, we're testing our product messaging and positioning. We're testing, UX, what people call conversion rate optimization, to get as many of them who are qualified to become leads. Once they're in the free trial, we do a lot of testing around the marketing we provide to them during that 14-day period. So they receive emails that walk them stepwise through how they can set up and become a successful merchant, right? Of course, you've got pricing and packaging and plan selection, various communications they receive for cross-sell and upsell to merchant solutions during the tenure of their subscription, and efforts we make to lengthen the subscription. So at any given time, we're running this massive multivariate test where you have wins and losses. We actually consider a loss better than a neutral because we've learned something. But often the way that you move the lifetime value needle is through a series of small, 2, 3, 4% optimizations that add up. About once a quarter, you'll see a double-digit type win. But it's a game of inches in optimizing a merchant's lifetime value.
Thanks. Could you give us a sense of how the share of performance marketing spent on international has changed from, say, 2016 to 2018?
Yeah, I think we don't typically do really detailed breakdowns, but I'll say that international is a huge area of investment for us. We think we're seeing early signs of life there, and to the extent that that works, we're able to spend more while staying within the constraints of our flywheel, which requires that we run at an acceptable margin. So broadly speaking, going up. But that's true as long as we're in appropriate ratios that deliver the financial return we like from the performance marketing operation.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just surprised that the returns were as consistent as they were if you were doing more work internationally. Are there any other dynamics that might be at play there?
I think it's just being disciplined about spending to what works. It's also worth keeping in mind that paid advertising is not the only way we acquire merchants. Some of the most productive things we've done, and frankly, if you were to go back 10 years, the bread and butter of the domestic or North American, let's say, marketing operation was having really robust content experiences and full funnel marketing that leverages organic search, direct traffic, and other unpaid ways of acquiring merchants. In some cases, offering ancillary services to owning your own business.
I have a question on branding. So you talked earlier about Shopify, and I think you even showed on the in-store hardware for point of sale, showing the name of Steve Madden, for example. So how do you think about, as the chief marketing officer of Shopify, whether or not, for example, on digital receipts, there should be something that says powered by Shopify or things of that nature?
Yeah, we're starting to step out. This is a company that's, I think, sort of historically been humble and sort of in the background, and we're dipping our toes into marketing our brand to achieve that 100-year vision for the first time. But look, we're one of our distinguishing value propositions for merchants is that they control their brand. There's plenty of places you can go, plenty of marketplaces where the brand itself is in the background and the marketplace is dominant. That's not Shopify's value proposition. It's not our MO. It's just not how we operate. We want the brands and our merchants to be able to be front and center.
Hi. How do you think about the physical stores as part of the brand campaign? How should we think about that going forward in terms of how you might utilize these physical locations?
Yeah, I'll assume you're referring to the Los Angeles
Correct.
retail location. Yeah, I mean, the LA retail location has been great. It's something of, like so much of what we do, it's been something of an experiment. I would just be careful to say that that is distinct from the brand marketing campaign, the first campaign we put into market that we're executing as a test. The Los Angeles retail location, which is a place for people to get guru support, which is sort of our vaunted customer service that leads to such great merchant satisfaction, to meet other entrepreneurs and share learnings, to have meetups and events. That's really a distinct experiment from the brand campaign, Let's Make You a Business, that we're running in 12 cities right now.
And going back to that, the way that you saw a flat payback period in those cohorts, could we double click a little bit more in that, and what? Because I would assume, like, going back to like Facebook and search get a little bit more expensive. Like, what are the main qualitative drivers between that? Has the percentage of organic traffic come in stayed the same, or is that increasing, and then maybe a little bit of deleverage on the paid side, or how should we think about those pieces?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would just say high level is that our lifetime value to CAC ratios have been fairly flat. That's a fully attributed number where you're looking at all orders and all performance marketing spend, but there's a number of variables that go into that. It's not just the effect of spend and traffic source mix. It's also the lifetimes themselves, right? So there's you can't just look at the denominator in an LTV to CAC ratio, which I think is sort of the premise of the question.
So I'm curious about fulfillment and how that sort of fits into the 5-year picture of the image of Shopify and sort of, our SMEs that are fulfilled via Amazon. Is it going to be pitched as, we're better because of X, Y, and Z, or maybe just give us an idea of how to think about, how are the small businesses going to be viewing that development as it is sort of rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, look, Thomas and Amy spoke about this a lot earlier. We're very early days, I think, and far from the moment when we're out in market with a merchant-facing campaign around fulfillment. But the role of Shopify has always been to democratize access to a set of tools that for a smaller merchant is hard to come by. And I think that that's what that fulfillment network will do. And it will do it at a rate that none of them would be able to secure as their own. So what I don't have today is the specific value propositions and messaging that we'll use in market for a campaign. But you've also got, for any brand, a set of global value propositions. And certainly one of ours is democratizing commerce, making the complex simple, bringing scale to smaller merchants and individuals. And so, I think that broad framework holds up very nicely in the context of Shopify Fulfillment Network.
Hey, thanks. So you touched on Shopify Studios a little bit. I was wondering if you could delve into that a little bit more. How does that fit with the brand, the conversation? Is it a separate thing? How do you think about how that leads to improved ROI and LTV for your customers over time? And you ever think about letting the merchants leverage some of the expertise, whether it's just on the marketing side or on studios in general?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions in there. I'll take them one at a time. The way I think about marketing and the way I think most marketers would say they think about marketing is in a funnel kind of arrangement, right? And what's typical to do as you're at the inception of a marketing program is to start at the bottom of it, right? There are folks and they're taking actions, typically in a digital environment, that signal their interest in your product or service, and you want to be there to efficiently convert them, right? That's search marketing, for example. Like, you search for start my own store, we want to be there, right? And then over time, as you've developed those efficient marketing programs in the bottom of the performance funnel, you start moving up funnel, right? So the way I think about brand marketing is that in a marketing funnel, it's north of performance marketing in creating awareness for the company. North of that is studios, which creates awareness for the category. We want to create a movement towards entrepreneurship and redefine what it can mean. Every day, we have a front row seat to the most inspiring, insane, sometimes heartbreaking stories of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And there's an opportunity to reclaim what that is and what it stands for. There's something that was foundational to our brand research that I didn't hit on earlier, which is that we talk about entrepreneurship, but the smaller side of our market, our merchants, they don't think of themselves as entrepreneurs. To them, an entrepreneur is like a rich, white, arrogant guy in San Francisco, right? And so what they would say is, this comes out in the research, they'll say something like, well, I'm every bit as motivated as entrepreneurs, I'm every bit as creative as entrepreneurs, but I'm not morally compromised the way some of those entrepreneurs are, right? And so there's an opportunity to redefine what entrepreneurship means in a way that's distinct from the way it's been portrayed in mass media. And so that's the function that plays in a total marketing funnel, is like, let's redefine a category, knowing that if there's lift in that category, it's accretive to the company that plays in that space, or hopefully most plays in that space. Below that, let's have company and product consideration through brand marketing. Below that, let's have performance marketing that efficiently reads signals of digital intent and converts it in a lucrative way. That's the way we think about it.
I think this will be our last question, Jeff.
Could you talk about just the timing of the brand marketing, and then if it's super successful, like presumably you do more of it, and then you're spending more, but people's awareness doesn't necessarily mean people are getting on the platform yet necessarily.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I think if I were to try to play back your question, I think you might be saying, well, if you try to judge this on awareness and it succeeds on that basis, what confidence can you have and over what time horizon that translates into more business for Shopify? And I guess what I would say is that you have different metrics for different time horizons. Yes, the per se objective of the campaign is to raise awareness, and that's the first read we will have on the efficacy of the campaign. But during the campaign cool down period, so the campaign ends in mid-July, it was a 12-week flight, and then we'll watch the geographies over time. During the cool down period, what you'd expect to see is that the increased interest moves down funnel. So first, the awareness metrics move. The next thing that moves are session metrics. The next thing is lead, and the next thing is conversion. So the measurement of the campaign doesn't end the day the campaign ends. You follow cohorts or geographies or whatever your chosen measurement unit is for a period of time. And so, the assurance I would just give is that if this works, and by works I mean translates into business, then there will be more of it because it will conform to our methodology, which is you spend against what's working in an acceptable margin structure.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. All right.
Thanks, guys.
All right, one more speaker to go, our closer, Shopify CEO and co-founder Toby Lutka.
Hey everyone. I think we're making good time, which is good. I heard some of you have to catch a flight back to New York in a bit, so super fun day around the office. There's a lot of preparation that has to go into something like Unite. So we're not actually the kind of company that has like a massive team for something like this. It's kind of a collaborative effort across all the groups which want to talk and announce. And I think you get a good sense for the kind of people that work in Shopify. I think it's an incredible team. I'm certainly blown away all the time and count my lucky stars to get to work with such incredible people day in, day out. And I think there's really two parts to what we announced today. That I've said many times before that what Shopify is today, at this point, it's a very well-developed version of what I myself hoped I would have found in 2004 when I started this snowboard business of mine. And that's true. That's still what we're executing against. I can tell you, in 2004, if I would have gotten a customer who wanted significant changes to their orders, I would have probably solved that problem about 15 years ago with order editing. But great, at least now we can do it. And Lindsay was a bit hard on us on this. There has always been a couple of important things you could change about orders. But now we have unhooked from this poor decision I made in 2004 on the immutability of a data model underlying the orders. This is now a wonderfully immutable system, and therefore we can further evolve orders after they've placed, because unbeknownst to me, orders that have been placed are living and breathing objects that need to evolve over time with the requirements of a business. So, lesson learned, and code has been written. More interestingly, so I would have found Shopify that someone else built in 2004, would have started using my snowboard store. But I shut down this snowboard store. I mean, I shut it down partly because I got really busy building Shopify. But I tell you why. And if I would have had that fulfillment network, I wouldn't have had to shut it down. Because I wouldn't have had to make that choice, right? Because it was a pain to go to the postal office and go and literally, like, we were biking with try biking with snowboards. it's not for a faint of heart. So you're going to a post office, bringing the snowboards, dropping them off, and that was the thing that became untenable, and why I had to make a decision. Am I spending all my when I made the decision that Shopify software needed unshared attention, I had to stop the snowboard business, and that's kind of too bad. So it's really gratifying to get to take some point in time and then kind of come at this from all these directions and trying to make it retrospectively better for the people who might encounter themselves nowadays in similar situations. So it's a cool way to see the company sort of moving itself forward. Good, but I know everyone has questions, so why don't we go to questions?
Thank you. I just have a question about the fulfillment network. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how you're going to hold yourself accountable to making this project a success. What's the time frame that you're giving yourself? What is the objective? Is it a volume objective, from a margin perspective? Is there a target? I'd just love to hear your thoughts on something you discovered in 2004 that now is coming to fruition in 2019.
I mean, in sort of a famous Supreme Court words, I know it when I see it. I think it's going to be very hard to quantify this right now, because I think we would say we would set probably the wrong goals. And I actually found this is maybe sort of a stylistic difference. And at Shopify, Shopify is a very data-informed company, but it's not we're not one of those OKR companies. I know this is very popular, and various well-known people are writing wonderful books about this. I just have found that one of the most sure ways to get a single metric accomplished, but basically with scorched earth all around particular blast zone of a particular metric that you set is to set these metrics. I found that it's better to drive an entire area forward based on an appreciation for the value that this area causes and the value it's off to the merchants. And they will absolutely tell us. One of the most surefire way about the entire Shopify thing is when we do something, our customers tell us. And so we will know. Now, obviously, I want this to be a major part of the company. And even zooming out from that, and I think this is a problem that needs to go away. Or at least that needs to be diminished in the terms of pain it causes and the complexity it incurs in businesses. And so I don't actually think so much about the competitive situation here, because like we're not the only one. Famous Marketplace does a similar thing with a little bit of different tweaks. Hopefully there are other players coming into the space. And I actually see us all as sort of co-conspirators trying to make it so that SMBs can also provide a kind of experience that is people come to expect from much more established merchants. So I think we will, I don't think this will be subtle. I think the success of this particular project will be obvious one way or another. It's certainly going to be interesting, but I hope it's going to be a very positive story.
Thanks. I wanted to ask about international. Obviously, you've learned a lot in the prior years. Just wondering, based on those learnings, what surprised you, and are you in some ways more emboldened about how global this platform could be if you look out 3-5 years?
Yeah, I had one unfair advantage that I moved from one country to another country. Everyone who sort of moves from continent to another has a little bit more appreciation for just cultural differences of places. So one of the most fun things was seeing a company full of Canadians figure out saying, wow, the rest of the world really is very different from us, isn't it? It's when you just travel and visit places, you don't really appreciate this to the same degree. I think that's behind us. We have now a really good playbook for how to show up in countries. We have a very good go local strategy, and it's not a lot of new things I can tell you there. It's one thing we have noticed that is a huge advantage that we have is hire people. Like we're here in Toronto, which is literally has people from every country we would ever want to expand to who probably immigrated within the last 15 days. So that's useful. And so we will put our slight unfair advantages to use. Tightening up our go-to-market. There's a couple of parts of Shopify which aren't as market configurable as we want them. So those are sort of technical challenges that are falling one after another every day. If I'm tracking the internal product announcement change log, so those are kind of all don't have much longer to live. And the company is just excited about it. It's really, really fun to expand. It's fun to see what other cultures do. It's just the approach to how software is used is so fascinatingly different. It's one of the it's an easy project now that we've finally engaged in it because it's almost self-motivating within a company. So that's really cool.
Hi, Todd Copeland from CIBC. I want you to talk about how the company is scaling up very quickly now, and there's execution risk with all the different investment areas that you're getting into, international plus now fulfillment. Talk about how you are thinking about managing that execution risk. Thanks.
I mean, I'm fascinated about organizational design, motivation management, you basically at this like at Shopify size you need an honorary degree in behavioral psychology to even get anything done, which I hopefully have acquired at this point. I always talk about Danny Kahneman and Atmos Tversky as my spirit animals. So I think honestly the hedge against the organizational risks is, I wish I would have something really surprising, but it's hire really great people. And I think what we have accomplished is that for a fairly large geographical region, I would probably put all of Canada in it and maybe a little bit beyond. This is so clearly one of the companies that is doing exceptional things, where people go to have to spend many, hopefully, years of some of the most exciting years of their careers together. One of the best things I think about announcing the fulfillment network is that there's a lot of people with a lot of very deep institutional understanding about this world. We have many of them, but we will need more, who are currently working in exceptionally good jobs, but who say, I'm solving the same problem over and over again for the same people. I would like to solve this for a larger market size, and people just generally find they get really motivated from helping the little guys, which is something that Shopify has figured out how to build a business model around, and most people didn't. And so I think we have all sorts of systematic advantages that come from being located in markets that have a property of long tenure for staff, so that people can really understand, get expertise level understanding of complex areas. We draw from a large area, and there's a good consensus that this is a fantastic career move to join this company. And I think then it is easier for the people to allow themselves to fall in love with what the company does, just because of the effects that Shopify has. This is something that a lot of elements of the tech industry are struggling with at this point, where people aren't quite so sure if about the secondary and tertiary effects of success within the companies they work for. And I think that's a cleaner and more obvious good news story within Shopify.
Two questions. One, when you were thinking about third parties to partner with for the fulfillment network, can you walk through the process of thinking about Amazon as one of those partners? And then the second question is, the success of the stock, can you talk about how that has impacted the culture of the company, the financing of the company, just in general, how has that impacted what you're doing?
Yeah. So about partner selection, so Amazon is not part of our launch partners. I'm keeping an open mind on it. If Jeff calls, I'll let him in, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So on the second, the stock price, it's hard. It's like the stock price is not about the value of a company. It's about the confidence of investors, right? Which is gratifying to see it go up, but obviously it went up a lot. And I can guarantee, like, as much as I wish it to be true, this company has not gotten twice as smart this year. And so I think one thing we do really well in the company is sort of distancing the appreciation of investors in the company from the thing we're working on, which is the real market value of the company. And this is important because at some point there's going to be days where it goes up 10%, some days it's going to go down 20%. On both days, we certainly don't get 20% dumber, and so it's good to keep that idea at arm's length. We generally have a culture of we try to get people to not think about this a lot. If you're caught checking the stock price, you will have to buy donuts for the rest of your office. I did recently had to put into Slack announcements just exactly what I just talked about the difference between real market value and this, which meant I had to get donuts for absolutely everyone in the company, which was really expensive. But this is the way it sort of affects us internally.
So I had a question for you on artificial intelligence. I wanted to get, you've talked about a lot of retail implications or opportunities for artificial intelligence, fraud detection, fulfillment. I was wondering what other ones you had thought of. And then also I wanted to get your input on basically the societal implications for artificial intelligence, meaning the potential for significant job loss. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the most powerful things we've ever come across, right? It's the reason why I'm talking about job loss is not because I have sort of a hit list of things that I think AI is going to replace immediately. It's actually almost more consequential than that. It's because what AI is actually, it's fairly straightforward to explain. It's like you give it a lot of things on one side, you ignore everything in the middle, and then you get results out. Here's an order, do something that judges if this is a good order or a bad order, and tell me that on this side. You get a lot of examples of this. You run it through a system. Afterwards, you kind of show it new examples, and it'll tell you which of the 2 results or 100 results or whatever you're going for is true. Once you realize this, it is staggering how many jobs in the world are actually just that. You know, how like everyone who works in a hospital and looks at imaging is literally doing the same thing. They're getting picture printout. They say cancer or not cancer, and or whatever else might be wrong, and then that result is something that's being processed with. After you have built up a training set for this, you can put a machine, a very basic algorithm. It's literally 6 lines of code at this point, by the degree by which we as a tech industry have tooled these kind of things. And it will end up with a higher accuracy than the doctors if your training set is accurate. So I come from a very technical perspective. So many jobs in the world are based on like something happened, a form is being filled out, an email is being sent, and then something is judged, and then something is an output. But it just can't help to think that this is something that will just have enormous implications once we get to that part of the industry. We are still kind of in the infrastructure component. Like there's lots of industry disagreements on exactly how to program these things. We don't even know if you're building computers right. Right now we are attacking this with crazy custom silicon. There's a couple of folks saying we actually have to unwind the computer industry all the way to the more analog approaches that we used in Bletchley Park for the Allies to win World War II. And build on top of that because that works better. So this is the kind of conversation that are going on. The end effect of this will be that suddenly computers will be able to do a lot of things we couldn't do before. More immediately, so the way this works in retail, I think one of the best illustrations of this is really this the fulfillment network. The 85% correct prediction of which area will have a next sale is witchcraft if to 10 years ago in the industry. Like this is crazy. And that was basically our first cut based on just the historic data that we already had. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to use AI in the sort of to make things smarter that hopefully doesn't exactly replace jobs. I hope we mostly keep it to the things that replace annoying aspects of jobs. I mean, there's lots more, and we use it for more every day. But yeah, capital is another obvious one where it's a big deal.
So 15 years from now, what's your sense of how much of Shopify's GMV will come from outside the United States? If the U.S. is probably 25% of global GDP now.
50 years from now?
15.
15. Wow. Okay. I was like, wow. I love thinking about 50 years from now. As Shopify has become bigger, if we put just a map of activity overlaid on a globe, initially early years was very, very coastal, and eventually became basically the same map you would look when you look at population density, right? It's things Shopify converges on the facts of the planet. So my hope is that it is going to be precisely what the global GMV is, maybe making some allowances for geopolitical circumstances of not being able to partake everywhere. But it's I certainly hope that we are going to be able to acquire the similar success and be actually, more importantly, be of as much value in every market as we are in the United States, and therefore people adopt us because it's just the right thing to do.
Maybe just, sorry, Toby, just trailing on that last question, thinking about it from a concentration of just outside U.S. GMV, when do you think you'll see the same types of penetration rates that you have here today in the U.S., call it that 5 to 10%? When do you think you can achieve that? And let's exclude, China and, potentially some other geographies that you just won't be in.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer to you because it's not the way I think about it. I do think that business success comes from is a side effect of the value that you are creating in a market, and so I've always been a little bit fatalistic about things like TAM size and market penetration. I just that sort of happens based on all the other work that we are doing. So I just don't. I know exactly the question, and I realize for many CEOs of a company like Shopify, this would be a super easy question to answer. So sorry for me to dance around it. I'm not being cute. I just want to give an accurate view of that this is not the way I sort of go at problems.
So regarding the POS system, you've talked a lot about the competitive positioning of sort of the broader e-commerce platform as one of the only one-stop shops there, versus having to aggregate a lot of other solutions. What's kind of your go-to-market for the POS system, given the competitive landscape there? How are you positioning that against existing competitors like Square, and where do you see that opportunity moving over time?
Yeah. The strength of a point-of-sale product is has traditionally been not necessarily the strength of the software itself, but the strength of the ecosystem it was attached to. It's for the people who already had a web store or wanted to engage in multi-channel selling. It was a superior product because you removed synchronization and duplication of data. This is something we really want to change. Like, we don't want this to be the best point of sale system if you happen to have adopted the entire rest of the Shopify platform. We want this simply to be the best point of sale system. So this is why we took this decision to just basically start from scratch and rewrite point of sale with some things like performance in mind, and take a different approach to the way it's laid out and the way it's used. It does look similar in the end, but once I think once the sort of shortcut style grid view is more fully realized through integrations, apps, and so on, this will feel markedly different than I think products in the market. So we want to take a leadership position and start driving that particular industry train the way we're driving the online store train, and that's our ambition there. And again, market adoption. I have amazing people like Jeff who are going to let everyone know once it's the best product. But I think first I don't like lying, so I think first we need the best product.
Hi, just curious, as you continue on this journey of becoming the sort of de facto retail operating system for all of your merchants, how do you, and continue to add more innovation and value to the product in terms of the services you provide, how do you think about the signposts of monetizing that value? What do you look to? What are the inputs to that conversation to think about pricing?
Mm-hmm. I think it's always Shopify has always been sort of slightly undermonetized, which I think is actually where you want to be. I think that's much harder to compete with for everyone else. That is holds you to a higher standard for costs of running your software and so on. There are some very important decisions that Shopify has made in the way its own architecture is developed that came from our desire to be able to make it so that someone signing up for a new store ends up being no more costly for us than someone adding a product to the database and so on. So sometimes these kind of restrictions actually lead to very creative solutions, and it's a good thing. We obviously have tremendous pricing power with our customers. I don't want to abuse this. I do see lots of opportunities to. The amazing thing about something like the fulfillment network again is actually, and there are not a lot of companies like us that are in this situation. All our customers are already spending a lot of money on warehousing and shipping. So the amazing thing about Shopify is that due to the scale and the size of the ecosystem, what we can do is we can now build this, and we can charge our customers less than they have been charging before, and yet add a good amount of margin to our company should we be successful. So those are the best opportunities, and those are the ones we like the best. Clearly something we've done in payments, and some other opportunities like cash advances. And those are the ones which I think are going to be the least controversial within the company. But there is, and I think you can see this from the outside, there's a very strong bias within Shopify to just give everyone everything. And sometimes that takes a little bit of extreme positions, and then Lauren shows up and saying, hey, I run Plus. I need to give some really, really good reasons for people to adopt Plus. And then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. We should really do this. And so this is the nature of the conversation usually.
Great. Hello. Oh, there you go. All right. Great. Thanks for taking my question. Jonathan Keys, Summit Insights. Just a couple topics I want to ask real quick. One is, you talked about the rebuild, the rewriting from scratch of your POS, of the order edit, offering that feature. Just curious in terms of the amount of time it took for that, the rebuilding the core product, and the amount of resources. I mean, it's kind of inferred from this morning's presentation, your response letter to that merchant who asked about that. Was it starting since then? And how you're talking about your this complete rewrite of your core product. Is it fully deployed? Is this what everyone has now? And then the second thing I want to ask you too is, in international being so important, you've gotten a lot of questions about it, and you mentioned during your Q&A, you would go back to Deutschland, and your family kept asking you, well, how about Shopify in Germany? And you didn't have a really good answer for them. I understand, the response that the subtleties of selling in each country is different, but other than getting it in German, excuse me, what were the challenges of offering it in Germany? Thanks.
So in terms of the rewrites, obviously we haven't been working for 10 years on order editing. It was sort of a series of moves that we had to do to get there. Like in earnest, I think we've been working. I think it's I want to say it was an 18 people team that's worked on this for the last maybe 3 quarters to get it to this point. It's not that crazy of an investment. It's always opportunity cost, right? Like Shopify is not. It's something has to be really, really important to get into, like rank on a priority list in the kind of things we can actively work on. It would be super hard for us to wanting to work on everything that needs to be done. This is a huge platform, right? There's plenty of companies, public companies, very big companies who do like one tiny component of what Shopify does, and then we are just announced we're going to annex an entire other thing into us. So we are already in danger of indigestion with the scope of this company. Point of sale is also not, it hasn't been in the works that long. It's software development is not linear. It depends on the infrastructure that exists. So the initial point of sale product was created 6 years ago, I want to say. We started on it, and it was very hard because we didn't have multi-location. We didn't have a concept of staff. There was a lot of concepts that basically point of sale needed to sort of attach to the hip of an e-commerce software back in those days. And now we have all these concepts as first-class concepts because the platform has evolved. And so it actually becomes really easy to rewrite this because the new point of sale, even though it's going to be much better, actually has to do a lot less than the old point of sale because it's based on a much better platform. The second question was what specifically was holding Shopify back in a country like Germany. Is that right? Yeah, again, we had about maybe 1,000, 2,000 people using it in Germany, but they were using it in English. They asked all their customers to use credit cards to pay, which is not generally deployed. It was just not, it was available, but not localized to the market. And now people can use bank transfers, can use everything, including the help software in German. It just feels like to a user, it wasn't that these things were obstacles because most people in Germany speak English reasonably well. It's just that it didn't feel right? It didn't feel like, hey, you didn't build this for me. And these are, again, the hard to quantify things which end up mattering a whole lot. And so those are the things we corrected for.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. You mentioned that you're focused on solving merchant pain points. How do you prioritize which pain points to solve first, and then how do you think about which ones to do yourselves versus leave to partners?
So, I mean, my favorite solution is to, like one sort of subtle thing we talked about today was the translation APIs. So, I don't know if I should get into explaining exactly how that works, but basically, we want our customers to be able to run one store that can be in the local language of all these different markets. We didn't actually add that feature. We added an API that allows our customers to, basically an interplay, our partners. It's an interplay between us and our partners, and the only way to get the feature for a merchant is to use one of our partners' pieces of software to do the translation, and then they will have different solutions. Like some translation agencies might build an app which does it all automatically. Someone might just do an interface for you to do it yourself, and any of those combinations. We don't actually want to have an opinion on how to do it because it's a business question. We just want to enable them, and those are always the best ways to solve sort of hand in hand with our partner ecosystem. Fulfillment network is similar. It's a network because we own nodes, because our partners own nodes, and so making the finding the sweet spot is the way we like solving problems the best. In terms of prioritization, I would say there's an ingredient in of going back to the sort of early idealized now Snow Devil days and imagining what would have been really cool if Shopify could have done it back then. That gets you surprisingly far in terms of decision making. But then again, our customers are incredibly vocal about the parts that are painful for them, so we tend to know. We tend to know from them. I'll do a internal program called Bridging the Gap once every quarter, and that's me taking phone calls from our customer support. which has recently actually led to some funny experiences. I was like, hey, here's Toby from Shopify. It's like, really? So, wow. So I'll have to. Problem is I can't really hide the accents, so it would be even weirder if I acquire some kind of pseudonym. But in those occasions, people absolutely do tell us what they would love for us to solve for them, and we have some boundaries, like we have to, because again, we can't annex the totality of all software problems into our company. We want to be focused on the physical retail space, and there's sort of boundaries around. Like we also don't want to just become a financial like a bookkeeping tool and all these kind of things. So there's some boundaries that everyone in the company understands, and between those things we prioritize.
Are there any, in international, are there any markets you don't think Shopify will work, or do you think somewhere or another you can figure out how you'll be useful to those, that geography? Or are there any that you think, for whatever reason, it won't work?
I mean, there's some markets which are just which have their own version of internet, basically, and those are a little bit of head scratchers when we're looking at how to address those. We usually find that even though in those cases we find there's very valuable things that Shopify could be doing and could help with. So I wouldn't be involved in these conversations. I have an incredible team that looks at this and has the world's biggest spreadsheet to look at markets and figuring out, like every time we learn something new, it becomes another cell in a spreadsheet, and we figure out what is the obvious next place for us to go, and that's, I think, actually the best way to make these decisions.
Hey, thanks for taking the question. Can you talk about the B2B commerce market, and does the Handshake acquisition kind of accelerate your market share penetration, or is it more about getting your foothold in the door first?
No, the Handshake acquisition, I mean, I think I can say this, it's an acqui-hire, right? It's and even that, I don't really like the term. Sometimes it's really just about, if you really want to solve problems, you have to fall in love with the problems. If you want to solve the problems quickly, find one of a few people who happen to have fallen in love with a problem 10 years ago. Those people are often running companies and really want to solve something, and then we have the ability to bring these people in and giving them a second go at something if it didn't work the first time. And the B2B is a good size opportunity that, again, our customers tell us a lot about. We have some software in the market. This is one of those pieces of software that works in a few cases, but probably didn't come in its original conception from such deep of such depths of insight as we should have had into the problem set. And so we have ambitions to do this better in the future, and found a team that really understands this, and now we're working with them.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Toby. And
thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it. Hope this was fun. I think it's more fun when it's fun, right?
It's a lot more fun when it's fun. So thanks so much, honestly, sincerely. We deeply appreciate the time you guys take to understand Shopify. It's big, and it takes some time to understand. So thanks very much for coming.
Cheers.